All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is 4 o'clock here in Los Angeles. Let's go ahead and get started with our lesson for today, which is arithmetic. Today's lesson is a good lesson, in my opinion. It is the single most important math lesson of the entire course. I just want to make sure we understand that at the outset. I think a lot of people disrespect arithmetic. A lot of people worry about the lessons that are to come. Get me into some geo, we say. That stuff's tough. Probability, combinatorics, rocks my world. I know that's where the tough questions are, so that's where I really want to spend my time. F this low-level shit is what some of you are going to start to think. Huge mistake, in my opinion. Everything we do from here on out will be based off arithmetic, folks, so please make sure you understand that. Do not regret mailing this lesson in and the homework and any other doubts you may have about this material down the road. Now, what makes arithmetic interesting, in my opinion, on this exam is really, again, goes back to what this test is designed to reward. It does not reward brute force math, folks. It does not reward your ability to be a human calculator and crunch some crazy numbers. Instead, what it rewards you for doing is being able to see properties, pattern recognition, and start to understand very deeply what this math is all about. If you manage to do that, then you're going to be able to overcome a lot of the difficult traps that the test maker likes to set, where they manage to, screw you with some of the weird stuff that we started seeing the other day with the numbers, perhaps even with the abstraction, as I started to highlight for you the other day, as we'll soon see as our very first question of the day. And they'll manage to try to take, like I said, that math that you've always known look like math you've never seen, but you ain't going to panic. You're going to stay really calm. You're going to stay really focused because you're going to remember one thing. This ain't a math test, it's a reasoning test. And if I can appreciate that and approach it that way, this shit's easy. So, with that, what's our game plan? We're going to start off with the world of arithmetic calculations, the operations, the stuff that's simple, arguably, but it's fundamental to everything. So we're probably going to spend the whole first hour talking just that. Then we'll get into the second section, the world of the factors, multiples, and number line. These guys say it's arguably the most important skill set in the world of the GMAT. Not even the quant section, just the world of the GMAT. I think that might be a bit of a stretch, but I will tell you that I think it is damn important, so we'll probably spend the whole second hour talking that. And then we'll spend the last hour kind of filling the gaps with the stuff down below, meaning this stuff is important for sure, but probably not as important as the stuff at the top. And just as a reminder, and my email welcome to the course pretty much says as much, hey, I've got 4 hours of material to cover in 3 hours, so I'm going to kind of cherry pick as we go, hey, stuff that's important, at least more important in my opinion to get through. And thus, if there's stuff that obviously gets left behind, and there will always be stuff that gets left behind, definitely go back into your books as soon as you can after the lesson is over and really plug those gaps. So with that, let's go ahead and get into some arithmetic calculations / operations, folks. This is the stuff that's basic. Can you add, can you subtract, can you multiply, divide? Of course, we all can. So what makes it tough? Well, stuff like this. Meaning, they say, hey man, if we can all add and subtract, then what's the point in asking a question where we're all going to get it right? Who the hell we're going to weed out in that process? Because remember one thing, all the GMAT is designed to do is weed people out. Some of us want to go to top 5 schools, some of us want to go to bottom 5 schools. Whatever it is, for whatever reason, it don't matter. At the end, though, in order to make that work, in order for those judgments to be made, the test has to be able to bucket people out. And the way they do it is by asking questions such as this one, because it does a really good job of weeding people. Now, notice what we've got. It's a subtraction-based question. Now, I love this question because I think it is the epitome of what so many GMAT questions in the world of quant start to look like, which is first and foremost, they just start asking you to do stuff that frankly you should have no real intention or desire to want to do. And that's because 99ers, we are not reactive, we are proactive instead. And so you're going to hear me try to teach you guys that you need to be constantly thinking about rewriting questions. And to me, this is a great example of where we can start to exercise that skill. I don't care about this particular question, like I won't care about many a question here. And it's important that you guys do not start to get attached to any single question, but instead start to ask yourself how you can scale what we talk about here to a whole lot of other concepts and questions. And so for me, the first thing I want to make sure you guys start thinking about as we get into this question here is, hey, being proactive, not reactive, which means rewriting the question that way we want to do it. Don't answer the question the way they've asked it. And that's because my guess is most of us are pretty comfortable with addition, at least far more comfortable with addition than we are with subtraction. Sort of like driving a car. Many of us are probably much more comfortable driving it forward than we are in reverse. We can get to the same damn spot both ways in theory, but one is more accident prone. One takes more time. And so to me, it's the same thing. So if I understand that subtraction and addition are the same, then why would I tackle this as a subtraction-based question? It makes no sense at all. So that's the first thing I want you thinking about. The second thing I want you thinking about on this question. Notice they ask you for the value of a diamond. Does that mean that's where you got to start the process? Hell no. A lot of times they'll send you off on a wild goose chase. Where yeah, that's what you want, but that don't mean that's where you start. Because even as you start to look at this, my hope is that you start to recognize that the diamond, while it may be there, is kind of clustered with some triangles in the mix, and that may make it a little bit tougher to start to figure things out. Whereas the triangle is just hanging by itself. And thus you could probably get a much better sense of what the triangle is all about. And thus you want to probably start your journey there. And that's going to be a theme that you're going to see quite often as well. Again, as a quick reminder, in my opinion, the first hour of the first day, the most important hour in the entire course, I do not want you focusing your attention down here on what I need to know. I mean, you got to spend time there, of course. I'm not going to lie to you and say you don't need to know a lot of stuff. You do. But the mid-levels, well, what do we got to do? And even that's pretty damn important, but I don't want to really be there. I want to be up at the top, thinking like the test maker. And again, to me, that's what do I got to be on the lookout for? And so what I'm trying to tell you right now is that, hey, on a lot of these questions, they might get me going somewhere, but that don't mean that's where I start. So you want to start to learn. Fundamentally, obviously we got to beat the timer to beat the test. I talked about that on Monday night. But in order to do that, and it's a bit counterintuitive, I actually have to learn how to slow down so that I can speed back up. And a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, I thought I was supposed to beat the timer. How the hell am I going to slow down? But it's like, well, wait. If you actually slow down and you actually evaluate what you got, and instead of just running for the diamond, you start thinking about the triangle and start to recognize that, yeah, you know what, it is hanging by itself, so I could actually probably get a better handle on that first. That could actually get the process going much quicker to the finish line. Whereas if I get bogged down on that stupid diamond, I don't know, 2 minutes could pass by, I still ain't getting anywhere. And I think that's something you want to keep in mind. So as we go through these questions in here, these are the kinds of things that I want you thinking about. I do not want people in here, as soon as the question starts to come up, put my ass on mute and just start doing it. Because again, I don't care about this question. This question isn't particularly tough. Even though I'm going to be happy if half of us get this right, but to me, it's about the takeaways that we should be getting in each of these lessons and start to scale up to other problems. And that's what I really want us to focus in on. And that's what I commented the other day about my old retake who sat through the class the second time and all of a sudden it went on big time. That's true. That's a good point. So that's moot. The mute point is now moot at this point. All right. With that then, let's go ahead and take a crack at this question. Let's bring some serious respect, folks. Let's put 2 on the clock. Let's get this started. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get back into this question here. Decent performance on this question. We're in the 50s on it. And again, that I suppose makes me happy to see. But just as a quick heads up, I do see that we have one trial student here, Etherol, I guess, maybe. Just a heads up that maybe there's a tech snafu of sorts, but this class is not open to trial students, so you will be, I just chatted you up, but I haven't heard back from you, so we're going to have to remove you now, but feel free to contact customer service, and they can put you in as a trial student in any other class you wish. So with that then, let's go ahead and get into this question here. I think this is a good question, and a lot of you are getting this wrong, but probably the reason you're getting it wrong is you are not being proactive enough and instead being reactive and kind of getting stuck and kind of starting to worry because I don't know how to do symbols, but forgetting what really that this is not a symbol test. This is not anything other than a math test involving reasoning. So then if I can just try to reason out what I know about certain concepts, then I could probably get to where I need to be. And it starts with just the small things first. And I just want to make sure you understand that, because this can be intimidating for sure. But it's about trying to defang it, declaw it, and then just kind of knock it out. So first things first, like I said, I would not tackle this question in a million years the way it is written. Hell no. I would turn this into an addition-based question immediately. Now, if I understand this and I have to start to try to figure out these values, a good strategy to use is one that sometimes is referred to as the Biggie Small strategy by Brian, one of the creators of the course. And the idea there is go big, go small, get a sense of what the upper limits and lower limits for some of these numbers are. And like I suggested to you, in my opinion, the low-hanging fruit is the triangle, because it just hangs by itself. Again, you don't want to climb to the top of the tree to pick a piece of fruit off of it and then risk breaking your neck on the way up or the way down. Just put your hand damn out to the lowest branch, pop it in your mouth, and the job is over. So the same sort of idea here is if that's the low-hanging fruit, that's where I start. I don't got to start getting ambitious dealing with the diamond just yet. So question for you. Now let's assume in this case that this is just a double-digit number. Do not assume they are triangles. It's just a standard double-digit number. If I'm adding 667 to a double-digit number, what is the smallest number that this triangle could ever be? Could it be a 1? Could it be a 2? Could it be a 3? A 4? A 5? Yeah, great. Absolutely. It's gotta be, at the smallest, a 6. And again, understand why. And those of you saying 7s are wrong. Let's be careful on this. Remember, smallest by definition just means 1. Unless some of us are hedging our bets already, we can't be betting. How the hell are you back, Etherol? Megan, could you chat in the main chat? Maybe Etherol's got me on mute. Etherol's got to go. So the one thing that I would say as you look at this is imagine, again, if this were like 11 or something, I could still end up at 678. Like, you have to realize that it could be a 6 something. So for sure, this would be the smallest it could ever be. It can never go to a 5 something, and I think that's important to realize. Because if I'm already at 600 something, I'm going to stay at least at 600 something. So let's rewind back on this front over here. So for the same rationale, if you think about this as a subtraction-based question, you start to realize, like, I can't be in the 5 somethings on this front. And I think I just answered your question there, Molly. If you look at this, you can't be at a 5 something and then subtract out a number and then get to a 6 something. It doesn't work that way. It's only going to be at least that, if not bigger up here. And so if I look at that, I say, great, I know the smallest it could ever be is a 6. Okay, good. Now, what about on the upper limit here? What is the biggest this value could ever be? Again, just imagine this is double digits here. Could this be a 9 something? Could it go into the 8s? Is it possible to be in the 7s? Yeah, good. So you're telling me, no. It can't ever be a 9 something or an 8 something. The biggest it could ever be is a 7. And that's 100% correct. Because imagine, again, it's like 99, as big as it could possibly get. We're still at 766. You can't roll into the 800s. It's impossible. So again, from a subtraction point of view, the same idea. I can't be in the 900s and subtract out a double-digit number and end up in the 600s. Impossible. So you are 100% correct that ultimately this triangle at the smallest level would be a 6, or the biggest level would be a 7, and that's important. Because now, with just even that in mind, it could allow us to start figuring out what the diamond could be really very quickly. Meaning, you know, if this were a 6 for the triangle, you could put that in as a 6 here. 7 plus 6 gets you to a 13 or a 3 for the diamond using units digit knowledge. You could put a 7 in here. 7 plus 7 gets you to a 14 or a 4. And this is the moment that you have to start to now compare your practices. Did you stop and say to yourself, albeit under your breath, please, almighty GMAT gods, give me one answer that's either a 3 or a 4, and I'm done with this question? Because I know that this is not a short answer fill in the blank type question. At this point, if you just gave me a 3 or a 4 and that was all you gave me, I know that's the right answer. Because I've been deliberate and methodical about what I've been doing to this point. I'll let the clown in the cubicle next to me sit there and sweat the details. Not me, says I, because I'm a 99er. And thus I say, sweetness, sweetness, thank you, damn you. Like, you hooked me up and then you kind of screwed me. So, you know, now I'm down to 50-50. I haven't even spent any real time on this question, but at least I've got a fighting shot at getting it right. So this kind of starts to go back to what I started trying to get in your head on Monday. Only the idiots are guessing 1 and 5, folks. We got to be doing something with our journey to get it down to 1 and 2 and 1 and 3. And a good way to think about it is imagining, you know, buzzer beaters of sorts. You know, imagine the shot clock is kind of counting down, and you just got to launch up your bucket from somewhere. It doesn't matter where, you just got to get it up. Well, you don't just kind of start to turn your head around and not look at the basket and do crazy stuff. You give it your best shot with what you got. So 1 and 5 typically isn't that. Now, this is from an addition point of view. Start to notice how much more complicated this would have been if it were subtraction. Because if I say, okay, well, what if this triangle here were a 6? Then I'd be, all right, what minus a 6 gets me to a 7? And I see a 6, I see a 7. My instinct might even be to put a 1 up there, but a 1 ain't going to get me to a 7. A 1 minus a 6 gets me to a 5 if I carry the digit over. So, like, you start to realize from an addition, this is automatic money in the bank. It ain't hard. But from a subtraction, it could start to derail you pretty quickly, and it's not worth going down that road. But now to finish this out, again, it takes just mere seconds. All you got to say is, all right, did the 6s and the 3s work? Well, pop them in. See. No, 667 plus 66 can't ever get me to a 633. I am now done with this question. Do I sit here and do I test the other numbers? No. It's like if I flip a coin, and at that point I say it's not heads. Do I really need to now prove to you that it's tails? Have some faith that this coin is legitimate. That's all this is about. Now, of course, if I didn't do this methodically, if I felt the need to kind of double check and triple check, it's only because I'm being sloppy in the setup. I'm not doing it right from the get-go. And that's something that as a best practice you need to start to embrace. You ain't going to be a 99 or if you have these sort of patterns in the mix. Oh, Francis, don't tell me you asked that fucking question to start. Don't even do that to me. Tell me you did not read my email like 6 times and you struggle with reading comprehension. I don't know, Francis. You might be a 200 level candidate. Or did you tell me you want to get a 500 on this test on day 1? Did you show up on day 1? What the hell? Yeah, all right. Well, I'm going to reel it back in real quickly. I'm going to move on to question number 2. And we're going to take a better crack at this question here. Seriously. Even if you're going to be a master of fine arts, you got to have listening skills, but I like your sense of humor. Remember, so we will recover here. So there are only 2 questions that are absolutely verboten in this course. 1, what level question is this? 2, can you repeat what you just said? Absolutely, you will have the death penalty incurred upon you if either one of those happens. So we got one free pass out of the way here, so that's good. It looked like there was another question that scrolled up. Definitely hit up Megan or hit me up via chat. I want to take a next crack at this question here because I think this is a great question. This is a much easier question, folks, but they're going to still try to screw you the same way with a lot of abstraction in the mix here. When you look at what you see here, they're throwing letters your way and they're hoping to overwhelm you with it. Don't let them overwhelm you. Instead, start to say, it's all background noise. I could just ignore it if I want to, and you'll quickly see that you can. But here's what's nasty about this question, frankly. It's not a tough question, much easier than the question we just did. But there's going to be a really juicy trap answer waiting, really juicy. For the people that said, do I really need to do the skill builder? Like, don't you know who I be? Like, I don't need to study for this class. I'm taking a class to study for the test. I don't need to study for the actual class. Okay, knock yourself out. But in the process, don't get knocked out. Because on a question like this, it's ready to start to hammer those of you that are straight up arrogant. And I could teach, let's say, dumb. I can't teach arrogant. Because there's nothing to teach. You already know how to do everything. Oh, no, you don't. It's just your ego gets in the way. So as we get into this question here, what I want us to be appreciative of is that, yeah, it's not that tough. But if you can't spot this classic sucker answer that someone's likely to pick because they get a little bit too cocky in the process, you're the guy who's now making those moves. And remember what I said on day 1, first hour, first day, most important hour of the journey. Do not tolerate false negatives. They say minimize/eliminate. To me, it's zero tolerance. As soon as you start giving yourself a free pass with whenever you tell the test maker you're dumber than you really are, and you start to make excuses for it, you ain't digging yourself out of that ditch, folks. So don't get in the habit of doing so. All right, with that then, let's go ahead and take a crack at this question. It's relatively easy. Let's put minute 15 on the clock. Let's knock this out. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a crack at this question here. Decent job on this question, but I want to start to kind of caution some of us with some of our behaviors. So first off, whenever the poll opened up, I saw definitely a lot of you flooding into the right answer, which was great. I also saw the #1 wrong answer on the board, classic trap, which made me sad because it was like, dude, the question's not even over yet. And I gave you, good time on this, meaning I was a little bit aggressive on it, but I want us to be aggressive. This is 99 or buzz. 90% of you want a 7-something. And this ain't a question where I could take 2 minutes and then feel really good about it, because it's relatively simple. But to me, the problem really starts to become when, hey, wait a minute. You clearly don't know how to do the question. But you're so disrespectful where you're like, I don't need the rest of the time on this. Let me just move on. And it's like, why? You're about to get your ass handed to you. And so this is the kind of stuff that, hey, burn me once, okay, fine, but I can't keep sticking my damn hand, let alone my head, in the damn fire every single question. So let's start to change some of this behavior, folks, early. So question for you. As you went through this, what did you know was going to be the #1 trap answer here that someone was likely to pick because they just got a little bit ahead of themselves? They just got too cocky. They didn't bother to actually think about it. No sitting out in protest. We definitely got to do it right. Always vote. Always get in a vote somehow. Yes, so I want to be clear. It is definitely choice A, not so much choice E. And I know some of you are saying E, and that's okay. And this is where things start to get good. The polls don't lie is what you'll hear me often say. And the reason for that is, again, I can already anticipate what I'm going to see in the poll because it's predictable. This test is so good that it knows its target market so well that it plants these answers that are so damn sticky that some of you, no matter how hard you try, you ain't going to walk your way out. Because you don't have respect. Because if you take a look at a question like this ain't hard. 9 times 9, get this over there, you get there, and you're like, okay, 8 plus B's got to equal 0, so clearly 2, choice A. Why did the guy give me 75 seconds? This takes me 13 seconds. Well, what am I going to do for 62 seconds at this point? What a waste of my money. And that's okay. If that's the way you feel, because this probably is a waste of your money. You ain't going to get shit out of a course like this if that's the way you're going to start to treat these questions. Because now you're starting to insult me. You're starting to say to me like, well, why are you teaching this class if you ain't even going to teach me anything? And it's like, well, no, I am going to teach you something. You just have to be open to it. And when you see a question like this, it's designed to do just that. This ain't a hard question. I already said that to start, but you had to see that someone was going to get it wrong. If you look at any question and you say, no idiot's ever going to miss it, newsflash, you're the idiot that just missed it. Always. And so as we start to develop a sense, as we climb that pyramid towards those high scores that 90% of us want to achieve, 700 something, then you have to be open to mistakes being made. And I like that a lot of you said right off the bat, well, obviously it's 2. Shit, I almost made that mistake myself, but then I said, hey, I finished this in 13 seconds, the timer's still going for another 62. Okay, it's time for me to figure this out and see, because I'm not seeing a sucker move yet. Oh shit, I just made it. And that behavior I can live with. In fact, one best practice, we'll call it a best practice of a student in training, not a 99er, but let's just say a student in training to get to the 99, is, hey, I'll spend the first 30 seconds getting my ass into a sucker answer, and then the next minute and a half getting out. And to me, that's okay for now. But if all I'm doing is the first part of that, which is I'm just spending the first 30 seconds getting to a sucker answer, and then I stay content and I live there, that's not going to get me to where I need to be. And so as we go into this, I want to start to recognize that, hey, I don't know how to do this question because it's abstract. There's so many letters there that it overwhelms me. That's okay. Dumb it down. One thing that I'm going to try to let you guys in on, a little dirty, dark secret of mine, is that 99ers like myself, we dumb things down all the damn time. We dumb it down not because we're dumb, but we dumb this down because we understand fundamentally there's no shame to doing so. When anything is complex and above your pay grade, it's far better to dumb it down and get it right than it is to kind of just be so arrogant and say, I don't need to dumb anything down, and then get it wrong and be the dumbass that does. So you want to start to realize that, hey, if this is a multiplication question, then how would you tackle a question like this? Well, you would obviously say 9 times 9 is 81, and then you'd say this, but you would never say 91 at that point. You just wouldn't. You would at least have the, I suppose, knowledge to recognize that, wait a minute, I'm actually supposed to multiply those two together, then add it, and thus really this should have been a 171. But because of all these letters in the mix, you start to lose sight of what you're trying to do. And thus, when you look at something like this, you're like, oh crap, I should have multiplied these two together. That's where I kind of ate it. And that's okay. But now you need to start to see it. Because as I look at some of the people that picked choice A, they're also some of the same people that did not correctly identify the trap in the main chat room. Coincidence? It's not a effing coincidence. If you know, it's like an old deals quote or negotiation quote. Sometimes people use it with playing cards as well. Like if you can't spot the sucker at the table, like you're the sucker. Like everyone else is clearly eating you for lunch. Like that's the same idea. So if you're looking through these answers and you can't be like, oh yeah, that's the one that the chumps are gonna pick, you just picked it. So now let's take a step back, because again, now it's about comparing best practices. Do I sit there and go, okay, 9B's got to get me to a 2, so 9 times 0 is a 0, 9 times 1 is a 9. Hell no. No one's got time for that. First of all, answers are assets. Remember, 99ers look at those answers all the damn time. Like our eyes are practically glued to them. And thus we say, hey, first of all, if I crush the scale builder and I understand even odd properties and I already know this is odd and I got to get me to even, I say, please, GMAT gods, give me one answer that's even and I'm done with this question. I don't even know what it is. Again, not that this is hard, but I'm thinking about when the shit does get tough, I got to use number properties to bail me out so often that this is how I start to think. So then I'm like, thank you, damn you. You've given me essentially 3 evens. Okay, that's cool. I can roll with it. But even there, I don't need to test all the even numbers. I just test the ones you gave me. So 9 times 2 is an 8. No. 9 times 4 is a 6. No. I guess choice D is my answer. I don't even need to test it. And in fact, I would argue it's a bit of a fail if I do test it. Because why? You have to save your time for another question that matters. So here, as an example, I gave you a minute 15. I think a minute is probably pretty good. Less than a minute would be nice. If I could get this done in 30 seconds, why even bother spending another 3 seconds testing the 9 and 8? And again, like to me, this is 3 seconds. You say, well, what's 3 seconds? Forget 3 seconds. What if instead this took you 20 seconds to evaluate, and 20 seconds to evaluate, and this took you 20 seconds to evaluate? But the strategy I'm trying to get in your head now is to save that time there, because seconds are seconds, folks. You have to learn to beat the timer to beat the test, and every little bit counts. All right, with that then, I want to take a look at this next question. I would argue this is kind of our first tough-ish question, and that's because addition, subtraction is easy as easy gets. Multiplication, not so bad. Division, okay, this is where stuff starts to get a little bit more challenging. But even here, what starts to make it challenging is that it doesn't just test your ability to divide. Any idiot can ultimately learn how to divide. But it starts to test your deep understanding of division. And how do they figure that out? Well, very easily. They say, hey man, you know how to do remainders? Okay, sweet. You know how to do decimals? Okay, sweet. Can you connect the two? Because it's showtime. And that's where things start to fall apart. Because if we go through the skill builder, we can learn how to do remainders, shit, we can learn how to do decimals. But our ability to connect the two, no one's really walked me through that. So what am I supposed to do? I'll tell you what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to climb that pyramid. You're supposed to start using that higher order thinking. You're supposed to start creating new paths out of the old paths you learned. Because you know all the information. And note the verb I said, know. You know everything you need to do this question. That's all in the skill builder. But it doesn't mean we're all going to be able to do it. Because this test is nasty. And this test is only going to let through, as it's trying to weed people out. Remember, it's constantly trying to weed people out. Those that can demonstrate a deep understanding. So when I try to tell you this ain't a math test, it's a reasoning test, it's because I don't want you to feel like I have the need to do brute force math. I don't. In fact, I probably shouldn't, because when I do, I'm going to F it up, because I suck at math. And so instead, if I can start to embrace this other mentality where it's like, I just got to understand the math deep enough where I can essentially avoid doing it, that's how things start to get done, and done in a very stylish way. And so when you look at a question like this, you may be stuck right now thinking, man, I kind of understand the two, but I actually don't really understand the relationship between them. Welcome to the club. But if that's you, then what do you got to do? Start dumbing things down. Use some simple numbers, perhaps, to start to figure it out. Figure out maybe something that involves a remainder. Figure out something that maybe you can translate into a decimal. See if you can connect the dots. Because ultimately, this is no joke, a 30-second question at most once you've done a question like this. Because you will have created a new formula, as I'm about to create for you, if you don't already have one. And then in that case, you're excited to see something like this. But we're not all expected to have seen a question like this before, in which case then it's a tough question to start. And so this is where I started saying to you the other day, hey, don't just tell me what you did. Don't even tell me how many you got right and how many you got. I don't care about that. What I care about is what you learn from your mistakes and what you learn from even the stuff you get right. Because man, maybe in this question it took me 2 minutes, but if I learned something that was all important that could maybe get me down to 30 seconds on the next crack, why the hell am I not cataloging that somewhere and then making sure it never leaves that brain? So with that then, let's put 2 on the clock and then we'll talk. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and start to slowly take a crack at this question here. Great comment, Jacob, and I know that a lot of folks are going to be in there, so let's definitely start to cool our jets at times. Here's what I would say on this question here. About half of us getting it right, and that's understandable. Like I said, this could be a bit of a challenging question at first. But hopefully as we start to do this, especially those of us that were too stubborn, too arrogant, and I'm going to use that word arrogant a lot, and I don't care if it rubs you the wrong way. Again, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to get people to where they need to be, and that's a 7-something, 90% of you. All right, so now I'm going to start letting people decide what we're going to do with certain people. So at this point, to Piyu Mitra, PU is what I'm going to say to your contribution at this point. So let's go back to what we talked about on day one. I need my boy Francis, MFA, to chime in on this. Didn't I say I don't want to hear shaking your head off the island? Hey, dude, no joke. I booted one student out last class. We decided we were. He was kind of we'll say it like instructionally challenged. And so this guy, I said, okay, how many strikes do we want to give this guy? And I was like a fair guy. I gave him like 3 strikes or 4 strikes. But at some point, I was like, all right, I'd had enough. And so finally, I was like, all right, we're gonna put it in a poll. And I put it in the poll. And I said, how many strikes do we give him? 0, 1, 2, or 3. You know what the most popular answer was? Like 0. People wanted his ass out immediately. So PU, and to everybody else. So we are going to go through this one more time, and that's it. No more after this. I'm putting you all on fair warning. I do not care if this results in a call to customer service. Go, this guy's such an asshole. I paid for this class and he booted me out. I don't care about customers. I care about students. And thus, if you come to this class as a student, happy to learn and willing to engage and follow along, I'm thrilled to have you here. If not, get the F out. So here, ground rules again, real quickly. No one gives two shits about what you think unless it's been asked of you. So, PU Mitra, do you understand that? Please say yes. It's very important that you can hear me. I am trying to talk directly to you. Now, that's going to, of course, go for everybody. I just want to be clear about that. But I just want to be clear because, all right, good stuff. All right. Yeah, because in this case, maybe it is 35. Maybe it's not. So we definitely want to make sure we could just do this. And look at that other person. Was it Tony maybe? I forget. She was like, oh yeah, I didn't get in the polls. Damn. That's okay. Dude, you want to talk about your you know what is completely acceptable real quickly? You want to roast me all day long. You want to roast Megan? Even better. All right, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good, PU. And I know this is all harmless mistakes. You have not struck me as a guy I want to shoot just yet, so I'm good. But sometimes people want to be like, oh, this is how I did it. No one cares, Again, I will always ask. I'm a very inquisitive person. Watch your back, man. See, I like Kyle. Kyle's a real MVP at this point. So the one thing I just want to say is like, let's just make sure as we go through this, we just follow some basic ground rules. That's it. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into this. But the next guy out is getting booted on site. That's it. And you can come back, I suppose, unless you're really problematic, and then don't ever come back. So let's get into this question here. Now, did any of you try to dumb this down? And dumb this down by using some simple numbers that, let me be clear, are not on any one of these. Like any numbers to start to try to divide to get some remainders? If so, I'd be curious what you may have used to kind of start this process. Hey, yeah, I think that's pretty good. I like that, Vivian. I like 6 out of 4. I think 6 divided by 4 is pretty good. I think it's a little bit weird to me that I suppose it's not reduced, but I can live with 6 out of 4 any day of the week because ultimately this is what? 1 2/4, which hopefully you recognize is really just like 1.5. And thus, if you could kind of see that, I'm okay, because then it's about division. And if it's about division, meaning you got to be like, okay, well, how do I divide 6 by 4? I'd say, okay, well, 4 goes in 1 time. And then, of course, I subtract it. Then I got my remainder, and now I'm kind of done. And so then the question is, okay, well, I've got a lot of different ways of saying the same number, but do I know how to connect the dots? And it's like, well, I hope so. Because hopefully I start to recognize all the quotients in the mix. Hopefully I start to recognize that this is really equal to that from a decimal component. And even here, if you start to notice, this 2 is really just this 2. This 4 is really just that 4. Like, I can start to see all the moving pieces, whether it be the quotient, the dividend, the divisor, or the remainder, and I start to see where they all start to manifest themselves in slightly different forms. And that becomes important only because now I can come up with a formula that will always be true. Because obviously the decimal is equal to this fraction part, so whatever the decimal is going to be what this appears to be is the remainder, and this 4 seems to be the divisor. And that's a formula you can run to the bank with. Throw that on a flashcard. It may not be in your skill builder, it's not, but it's one that we can create just because we understand how division operates. Because this is like one of those things that now, if I know this, that, oh yeah, remainder over divisor is always going to be the decimal. And I didn't know that before, but I'm able to figure it out with the assistance of Vivian and try to figure out, hey, let me dumb this down. Let me try to see what the moving pieces are. Then now when I see a question like this is a freaking 20-second question, like I said. Like it's like, oh yeah, when m is divided by n, the remainder is 14. Okay, so 14 divided by n, what's the decimal? 0.4. But I would never say to use the decimal. Why? Because fractions are friendly and decimals are deadly. So instead of 0.4, I would strongly recommend you write 2/5. You've got to know your fraction decimal equivalents. So this entire question boils down to, hey, 14 over n is 2 over 5. Knock yourself out and solve for n. This is now a very easy question. But in order to get here, we kind of had to go through a little bit of hoops. And that's the way this test is going to test you, for lack of a better word. Do I understand division? If I do I really understand division? And so that's a concept that sometimes we refer to as essentially reverse engineering. And the reverse exactly, man. The upside and the downside of having a lawyer teaching you is you're probably going to get at times some very cheesy things. But I'm telling you right now, they're designed to stick in the minds of the jury or the students. So when you look at something like this, the only thing I want to make sure you understand is that reverse engineering is, hey, can I put a product back together after taking it apart and really understand its inner workings? That's basically what you're called to do on a lot of these concepts. And if I can manage to do that with division, as we just did with Vivian's help with some of those numbers, this ain't hard, man. And so now it's about executing. And this legit takes 10 seconds. If it takes you more than 10 seconds, ask yourself why you're effing it up. Where's your fundamental deficiency? Are you doing more math than you need to? Then stop doing it. So in this case, as an example, 14 over n is 2 over 5. Bring the n over here. Bring the 2/5 over here. Now, if you're at this point, remember, I'm not rewriting this equation. Ask yourself how many of you rewrote it. Equal signs are expensive signs, people. You do not want to waste them. A lot of people just start to rewrite, trying to make the ghost of their 8th grade algebra teacher very proud of them at this stage in their life. It's a waste. No one's grading your scratch paper. Close your eyes, put your finger on the screen, get it right, no one cares. And so here, if I can avoid rewriting, but it's the reality, if I can avoid rewriting, then it saves me time, and I got to beat the timer to beat the test. This stuff I'm talking about from day one. So even here, order of operations says, hey, multiply across and then divide down, right? Multiplication before division. PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. But it's like, wait a minute. Why would I ever want to multiply and get a bigger number? If you're like me and you suck at math, and the bigger the number, the bigger the mistake. So I try to avoid making those kinds of mistakes. So instead, I try to cancel. Never, never go big to go small. That's also another way I like to think. So when I see this, I say, hey, yeah, 2 goes into 14 7 times. I get 5 times 7 is 35. Our PU Mitra answer. But to me, notice it's a legit 20-second question at most if you have this formula in your back pocket. But if you don't, it's okay to go through the little song and dance. Exactly. But see, we wanted to vote him off the island, but we want him back because he's taking us places where we want to be. And so, actually, in fairness, like if I'm him right now, I don't even care that, you know what, I got on 2 minutes I couldn't get my answer on the poll. Who cares? Meaning, I'm not going to feel bad. Because on test day, no one's ever gonna shut the poll down on you, so to speak, right? You can spend another 7 seconds. Homeboy would have done it, got the question right, and been in that half of the class and moved on to a tougher question. That's great. But for the purposes in here, I always got to try to keep time moving. So, if you just feel like, oh, I was almost there, I just needed some time, that's cool. But if it's like, shit, I could have had 2 more minutes and I still screwed, that's a problem. And you definitely want to start, figuring that out. Okay. Now, before I start to worry you guys a little bit too much in here, because obviously I've said to you now probably at least 3 or 4 times that I suck at math, and then some of you might be saying to yourself, like, wait a minute, I'm considering getting a freaking MFA right now because I suck at math, and now I thought you were going to be the guy who's going to teach me how to do that, and now you're telling me you suck at math? It's like, well, slow down for just a second. I say I suck at math because I didn't get a 99th percentile in the quant section. I got me a lowly 96th percentile. So for me, I'm not a math head, I'm a lawyer. by training. I suck at engineering and all the maths and all the crazy number crunching. And so to me, exactly, I do suck. See, Megan is well aware of my limitations. But the one thing that I want you to start to appreciate is that it's about starting to reason. Because you could say, like, man, if I could start to look at these concepts in a slightly different way, not one where I'm going to over-engineer with my brute force, you'll start to realize, man, this test is a hell of a lot easier than you may at first think it is, or at first fear or whatnot. So let's take a look at this question here to kind of carry some of this even further. So notice what it says. It says if 22,023 minus n is divisible by 11, and n is between 0 and 11, what is n? So if you look at a question like this, again, it's not complicated. You could say, all right, man, well, all I got to do basically is just divide this number by 11, whatever the remainder is, boom, there's my answer. And it's like, okay, but my guess is you're probably going to do long division, and if we already learned on day 1 that long multiplication is for losers, you think on day 2 I'm going to tell you long division isn't? Long division is for losers too. So if you find yourself doing a long division on this test, I would argue you're probably effing something up. Now, some of you might say, well, yeah, but I don't need to do that because I know my fancy little divisibility trick for number 11, and thus I could kind of weasel this out. All right, solid. Now what the F are you going to do? So sometimes we have approaches that work really well on a Mickey Mouse clubhouse level, but all of a sudden you're asked to build like a 3-story structure with steel framing, you can't do jack. So you always want to be thinking about stuff that's scalable. That's very important. So let's start trying to break this down first and then start trying to figure out how to crack the code on this. So first off, one thing I'm going to try to teach you, and we're going to do word problems very early in here because word problems are so important in this course, is that you can't afford to reread. Like if you find yourself rereading, and I see plenty of students reread all the damn time, you're getting buried alive. You've got to be very, very attentive as you're reading, and in order to do that, you got to try to translate as you go. So my rule is very simple. Write what you read as you read. So here it says if 22,023 minus n, so 22,023 minus n, is divisible by. Usually when you see verbs, those are equal signs, and when somebody says it's divisible by a number, that really means it's a multiple of a number. I learned that in the skill builder. So that really means 22,023 minus n is equal to 11 times int. Now what is int? Int is an integer in my mind. Some people would just write I. Some people would write K for constant. Some people would write C for constant. And you write whatever it is you want. But I know if I write an I or a K or a C, I'll F it up. Why? Because I'll think it's a variable. And then if it's a divisibility question and I got other multiples, I'll see that I got more I's, K's, and C's, and the next thing you know, I might be solving for I, K, C, and they're all freaking different, but I don't realize that because I'm treating them as a variable. So sometimes you got to know your limitations and then work within them. My limitation is if I see those letters, I F it up. But if I idiot-proof this, so an idiot like me can get this question right by just adding 2 more letters, you better believe that's time well spent. So I'm willing to write the NT. If you're better than me, then don't do it. But these are the kinds of things I want you thinking about. But right now, I ain't gonna F this up. Now let's go back to the skill builder for a second. Hopefully you mastered this concept of the number line and divisibility cycles. Because I will tell you right now, the single most important formula not in your skill builder, the division one is good, but that's probably the second most important one that I'm going to talk about here today. The number one that's most important not in your skill builder is just that. M plus or minus M equals M. Now what is the M plus or minus M equals M? It's one of my kind of stupid formulas. It's a multiple, plus or minus a multiple will always equal a multiple. So what does that really mean? Well, if you think about it, if I have a multiple of 2 and I add a multiple of 2, by definition, it has to yield me a multiple of 2 there. It has to, because that's the way it works. That's the even divisibility rule, so on and so forth. And so then if I know that, then on this left side right here, because I know the right side is a multiple of 11, on this left side, I should be able to break it up into multiples of 11 plus or minus multiples of 11. And I'm not going to just panic just because I saw this large and weird number rock my world. Because again, if instead of 22,023 minus n is divisible by 11, instead of it was like, ah, yeah, 35 minus n is divisible by 11, what's n? That's a question anybody can get right within about 3.5 seconds. But now, instead, when you see a question like this, it's tough at first. But then you start to remember, this ain't a math test, it's a reasoning test. And so you start to say, hey, how can I defang this? How can I declaw this? And then just turn this into like a tame little cat. So, question for you. When you look at this nasty number of sorts, what easy multiple of 11 that is very big that you should see kind of pop out at you? Again, it doesn't need to be super hard, super fancy, just a big multiple 11 that you could see and just start to yank it out. Yeah, so notice you guys are all saying 22, but then notice how a few of you are saying 22,000. Go big. Absolutely. Because remember, if I have 11 and I multiply it by a 2, and then I simply add on a bunch of zeros, that will definitely be a multiple of 11. And so now I can rewrite this mess as simply this next line, which means this is a multiple of 11. We already know that. So now, by definition, that means this has to be a multiple of 11. So a multiple of 11 plus a multiple of 11 equals a multiple of 11. Well, I can ignore this for now. So then the question really is, hey, 23 minus n is a multiple of 11. Knock yourself out. And it's like, what? This is ridiculously easy. Well, of course. But so was this original question. But what they've managed to do is try to obfuscate that from you by using those large and weird numbers. You have to start to remember you don't need to do that kind of work ever. And in fact, you know, one thing you'll hear me say in here is like, if you're doing it the long way, you're doing it the wrong way. Like, I could sit here and do a lot of math and so on and so forth, but it's not going to pay off immensely. Instead, what I want to be thinking about, and this is something that you're going to hear me say often, is like, hey, if I have a judge, what if I had style points and a judge was watching me? Then in that case, hey, what would he give me if I were to do it? And if he were to give me those style points, am I getting a 10 out of 10? Because if I'm not, and I'm brute forcing it, he's probably giving me a 3, and I ain't going home with gold. That's what I want you to think about. Yeah, and I think that's great, especially because, just real quickly, the ones are very simple. The divisible rule for 11 is you add up every other digit, so on. So you can get that right very quickly if it were. But when you start to get things a little bit more complex, that's where things start to come apart. All right, with that, I want to get into this last section here as we get into our first break here. So it's under this section of shortcutting calculations. And I'll be honest with you guys, I don't want you to use what I'm about to teach you for this stuff up here. To me, you do not shortcut this stuff. You have it memorized. And that is because it is non-negotiable. Everybody should have the 15 by 15 multiplication tables down cold. Now, be careful now as you start to go through this, because you're going to hear me say in here a lot, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that, it's imperative that this happens, so on and so forth. First of all, just to head this off at the pass, I ain't ever going to have a handout for you with all the things that I tell you that you need to do. You just got to pay attention, write it down. Now, when I say this, some of you are going to say like, damn, that's a lot. And I'd say to you, I agree, but I'm just trying to think about what's going to increase our odds of getting into those top scores. Again, it's 99 or bust in here. Given that 90% of us want a 7-something, it's best that you heed that advice. Now, some of us said, hey, we just want to be in the 6 bucket. Then the reality is you could start to discount a lot of what I say. So if I say you got another 15 by 15s, maybe you could get away with, I don't know, the 12 by 12s. Then we had what I'm hoping are some fat fingers the other night that were in the 5-somethings. Because again, I need you to ratchet up your expectations or start to question your choices that you're making in here. Because I might not be the guy for you. Is maybe just memorize the 10 by 10s, right? So like a lot of things that I'm going to talk about when I lay it out is designed to like, hey, let's just increase our odds of getting a really top score. And you know what you start to find, and it was really great, you know, it looks like I got a few more emails. I'll send you guys out, you know, some this Friday when I really get into my email, but today I saw some new ads, so I sent out a welcome email. An old student just emailed me. He just crushed the test. He got like a 720 or 730 or something. And what he said was like, dude, if you had told me on day 1 before I took the class basically or the day one when I took the class, whatever, that I would be disappointed if I got a 7.30. I would tell you, shut your effing hole, basically. Like, are you kidding me? But right now, I feel so disappointed in myself. And it was such a great story because it was like, he was just like so like, just, you know, like he had low expectations in the beginning and now he's like king of the world. I just love it, man. But anyhow, going back to this, you got to have this memorized down cold. I think that's important. But let's just say you don't. I still don't want you shortcutting. I want you using what we already learned on day one, which is units digits, which is, hey, please, GMAT gods, give me an answer that ends in a 0. I don't know what 12 times 15 is, but I know 2 times 5 is 0. One answer is 0. Please, please, please. It's a multiple choice test. Answers are assets. Now, are you ever going to see a question that says, what's 12 times 15? Hell no. Instead, what could you see? 15 friends decide to bring, I don't know, 12 packs to the B school kegger on Thursday, and so as a result, how much beer do they have among them? Really, that's just 12 times 15. But it's a little word problem, tries to make you do a little bit of reading, comprehension, whatever. But so the actual underlying skill, not enough is always the answer in business school, sadly enough. I've never seen, you know, I thought in law school we were degenerate drinkers, but in business school it's the same as well, sadly. Or whatever, actually. So the one thing that I would say as we go through this is, let's say, for whatever reason, the GMAT test maker screws you. Well, remember we talked about approximation the other day as well. Units, digits, and approximation. Because, all right, this is about 10 times 15, about 150, but give it to me bigger because that's bigger. Give me a 0. But what if he screws you? He gives you like a 160, a 170, a 180, now you're effed again. Well, what these guys say, if you want to shortcut calculations, is try to work off of multiples of 10, because multiples of 10 are very easy to kind of work in your head. Remember, these are all in your head. You're not writing this down. So instead, you're like, all right, well, why not break this 12 down into a 10, so that, and a 2. So you're like, all right, 10 times 15 is 150, 2 times 15 is a 30, bring them up, I'm at 180. And thus, you can shortcut your way there. I don't want you to do that. I want this memorized. So this is a 1-second question. But if you don't heed my advice, unit digit that. If you can't do that, then approximate it. If you can't do that, then deal with this. Again, depending on how complex the answer choices are. So same thing here. You're like, please, GMAT gods, give me someone with a 6. No? All right, fine. Well, here, first of all, I don't want anybody to get overwhelmed on that, because remember, half of this stuff is duplicative. You already know how to do the low-level stuff like 3 times 4. So really, all you have to memorize is probably about 20 or 30 pairs. So it's not a big deal, but the key, of course, are those non-negotiable perfect squares. So when you see something like a 12 times 13, another strategy that you could use is just anchoring to a perfect square. So really, 13 is just a 12 and a 1. You already know 12 squared, because even if you don't do the times tables, you at least got to know those. So you're already at 144, add on the 12, you're at 156. But here's where you're going to start to find a tug between memorization and derivation. Memorization helps you in the short run, derivation helps you in the long run. And so there's, you know, which one do I do? Both. So here's a great example. Like when it asked me what is 133 times 256, now I'm effed on arrival, because I don't memorize that. I know my 15 by 15s, but this? Are you kidding me? So it's time to start doing some law multiplication. Hell no, that makes me a loser. We talked about that on day one. So when you see something like this is how you now start to react slightly different. You're like, all right, please, GMAT gods, give me an 8. Are we done? Are we done? Are we done? No, we're not. Damn. But now you could start to kind of piggyback off of this stuff. So here, I want this memorized. But to do this, I'm going to use a lot of the same strategy down here. So when I see a 133, I can be like, okay, well, that's a 130 plus a 3 times 256. 130 times 256, what the F? I suck at math. I ain't going to be able to do that. So again, make your life easy. Remember what I said on the day one. No numbers are out by accident on this test. Everything's got some intelligent design or hidden beauty behind it. So when you see a 130, I'd say, well, really, any idiot can really throw 100 up in there. So is it a coincidence as 133? Not really. There's no coincidence. Because after all, 100 times 256 is pretty easy. That's just a 25.6K. What's 33? About a third. It's less than a third, but it's about a third. So what's a third of this? I don't know. 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times 9 is 27. So we're looking at 8-ish K. Well, that means I'm looking at a number that's about 34-ish K that ends in an 8. I guarantee you there will be only one answer. There may be a 30,000 ending in an 8. There may be a 39,000 ending in an 8. But notice I ain't spending another second on it. Why? Because I suck at math. The more math I do, the more mistakes I'm going to make. And I have to remember that as I process these questions. So even here, just as a great example as well, notice what it says. What is 18 times 14 divided by 12 divided by 21? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It tells me multiply that through, get a really nice big number, then divide it again. I got no time to do that, let alone skill to do that. So I've got to be thinking it's about the setup. The setup is the most important element in so many of these questions, if not all. So I start the setup. I say, all right, what's 18 times 14 divided by 12? Now I got to divide this whole thing by 21, which really means multiply by a 1 over 21, which means I could just really bring the 21 over there. So now this nastiness looks like this. And as we already started talking about before, never go up to go back down, or never multiply up to divide down. So if I know my 15 by 15 tables, yeah, I see 18s and 12s here, but if I'm always looking to cancel to make my life easy, I just see a bunch of 6s. GCFs start to pop out very quickly. So you're like, all right, these are 3s and 2s. 14s and 21s, you start to see 7s everywhere. Next thing you know, 2s are canceling, 3s are canceling. This whole thing just boils down to 1. Do I have any clue what any of those numbers divided and multiplied by are? Nope, not one bit. Do I need to know? Nope, not one bit. Because right now, as a judge is watching me do my thing, I'm just getting a 10 out of 10 on a move like this. Because I'm blowing the guy who's in the cubicle next to me, right behind in my tail, and I'm just moving right on to the next question, the next question, the next question, appreciating what this test is about. My ability to demonstrate higher order thinking and solid quantitative reasoning. All right, with that then, I want to be done with this first section here. I want to take our first break, guys. Let's go ahead and put 5 on the clock, and then let's get back to work. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this next section here. Yeah, appreciate the sharing of materials, guys. Again, dude, we are all here. Don't say that, Rayshawn. We are all here. We are all in this journey together. You guys seem like a great group. I will tell you right now, the more collaborative the environment is, the more no one takes themselves seriously, the more we're just in it to learn. And not only will it be a more engaging experience, but just one where we can all learn from one another. I think that's very important, guys. So definitely keep this up. I like the way this is off to a good start already. Let's get into this next section, which is all about the factors, multiples, and number line. What you have in front of you is, like I said, they think this is definitely one of the, not even arguably the most important skill set, and I'd say it's definitely up there, so we want to start to spend some time with it. And they really span from some basic elemental stuff until, as well as into some tough stuff. So definition of a prime number, any positive integer with exactly two factors, one in itself. What's the smallest prime number? Definitely the number 2. So how many prime numbers exist between negative 10? Disregard everything below a 2. So you got the 2, the 3, the 5, and the 7. So there's really just 4 prime numbers. Now, take a look at this next question. It says, are the following numbers prime or composite? Now, when you see a question like this, to me, this might seem like a joke of a question, because some of us may already have these numbers memorized, which is nice. I don't, because I suck at math, and my hard drive is very small up top. I don't have infinite resources up there. So I pick and choose my battles of stuff that I need to memorize. I can tell you right now, it ain't prime numbers. But if I ever sacrifice memorization, it's got to be because I got derivation in my back pocket. So for something like this, derivation is what's going to be bailing my ass out. Now, some of you might look at this and say, well, I could get this done in seconds, so really, let me put your ass on mute and wait till the next question, and that's fine. But the next question is basically going to be the same exact thing, at least from my point of view. But the next question, I'm going to be thrilled if I get more than a quarter of you getting the question right. So think about that for a second. I'm going to be thrilled if more than 25% get the question right. That's sad, especially when I have a group of high achievers in here where 90% of us want a 7-something, yet I'm thrilled if a quarter gets it right. Is it because it's a brutal question? Hell no, it's the same damn thing as this question. So what's the difference? The difference is approach. What approach are you going to take? What approach am I going to take? Because I'll tell you what I'm going to do as a 99er. And then we start to realize, like, oh shit, I was just going to do the same thing I did on this one. I know, and that's why your approach sucks, because it's not scalable. Because this isn't tough. You have small numbers, you don't have a lot of them. But as soon as you start to see more numbers, bigger numbers, all of a sudden things start to fall apart. So it's important that you start to follow along here, despite how easy it may seem. Because I'll tell you right now, it takes me a hell of a lot longer to explain it and talk about it and go through step by step than it would actually for me to execute on it. But I do this because I want you to start to see on the very next question, all I need you to do is the same damn thing. And if you do, you should be in that quarter that gets it right. So notice what the question says. It says, are the following numbers prime or composite? Composite just means products of primes. Now, if you look at this and say, okay, it's time for me to test every single number to figure out if it's prime or composite, that's already a fail. Why? Because the GMAT God, specifically the test maker, is constantly trying to help 1% of us, the elite, the 99ers in the crew. 99% of you, he's trying to screw over every chance he gets, and I started to suggest as much on Monday. And for right now, when I look at a question like this, I say, thank you, test maker. I see what you're doing. I'll get you back on the next one. And why do I say that? Because he didn't give me a bunch of random ass numbers, because if he did, I could understand that. But instead, what he's given me is a set of consecutive integers, or evenly spaced integers for all I care. And that makes my job a hell of a lot easier. Because instead of now testing every single number to figure out if it's prime or composite, I actually want to just start testing by prime divisibility rules, meaning I start testing the easiest numbers of them all, which is, hey, are they multiples of 2 or are they multiples of 5? Because that doesn't require me to do anything but check the actual last digit of the number. That's it, nothing more. And so when I look at something like this, I could be like, okay, so I got to test every single one. It's like, no. Remember what I already told you was the single most important formula not in your skill builder. All you got to do is find a multiple of 2 and then just basically add multiples of 2 to those, or find a multiple of 5 and add multiples of 5 to those. So in this particular case, if I see the 28 as the first multiple of 2, then I already know every other number, because this is a consecutive set, is automatically out. And thus, when I look at what's left, I'm like, okay, I see a multiple of 5 there. Add, subtract, I don't pick up any more. So I'm automatically down to 4 potential primes. So then I go to the next divisibility rule that I know, which is relatively easy, which is the 1 for 3s. Add up the digits. So then it's like, all right, all I got to do is find a multiple of 3 in this mix, and then just add or subtract from there. Well, hopefully a 33 pops out to you pretty nicely. If I add 3, I subtract 3, I don't pick up any more, I'm now done with the rule for 3. I'm not going to test this. It's a waste of my time. Again, if I'm slowing down to speed up, I'm being very methodical in the way I approach it, I start to develop a sense of confidence in what I'm doing. And that ain't arrogance. Huge distinction between confidence and arrogance. So now I go to the next rule. So the next rule is the 1 for 4. Look at the last 2 digits. But when I start to eyeball this, I realize I got no multiples of 4 in there. Why? Because I've already killed the multiples of 2. So how am I going to have multiples of 4 in the mix? It's not going to happen. Same thing for a multiple of 6, because the rule for 6 is just as it's got to be divisible by 2 and a 3. So I start to realize, like, I actually don't ever need to test for composite numbers. If I'm going to do a test to figure out primes or composites, all I got to do is just test for prime numbers. So really, do I keep going to 7, 11, 13, so on? It's like, well, wait a minute. Let's think about how numbers actually look anyhow in terms of factors. So if I wanted to know what the factors of 36 are, I'd say it's 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not throwing up random ass numbers. Why? Because I suck at math. And if I start just throwing random numbers up, I'm going to mess something up. I'll probably overlook something and then regret it later. So I try to be systematic in what I do. And what I do is very simple. I start with the smallest number and the biggest number itself. Then I go a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, until I can't go any further. This, of course, will always be the square root if it exists. Now, if I were trying to do divisibility rules, and I wanted to somehow eliminate a 36, for example, once I eliminated all the multiples of 1, I would never really need to eliminate the multiples of 36 to catch this, because I already caught it in my net. Same thing if I did the 2's, for example. If I eliminate the multiples of 2, I caught it. I never need to now check the multiples of 18s. It's already been done. So what you can then take from this is that really all I got to do is pick a side, left side or right side, and then just test those divisibility rules, really. But if you're like me and you suck at math, and by definition, if you're taking a class from me, you do, why would you ever go on the big side? You should stay on the small side. So what that really tells me is all I ever got to do is test up until the square root, nothing more. So, what is 37 square root? I have no clue. I suck at math, but I know 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49. Given that 37 is really close to 36, I'd say the square root of 37 is probably like a 6.1, because it's somewhere sandwiched between a 6 and a 7. So all I got to do is test all the way to 6.1. Well, I can't test 6.1. I really got to stop at the integer right before it, so that's a 6. So then I've already nailed everything, so I'm done with my testing. So what do I have left? I have 1, 2, 3 potential primes in this, not potential, 3 primes in this list. Now again, much longer to talk about it than to actually execute on it. But I want you to start to see this question right here. This is the same exact question in my opinion. How many prime numbers exist between 200 and 220? But some of you are going to say it ain't the same question, but it is. Now they've effed you though, because my guess is nobody has these numbers memorized. A lot of you might have already had that, so I don't have it memorized. Maybe you did, sweet. But now what happens? We start to fall apart because we don't have a strategy that's scalable. We got the memorization down. We don't have the derivation down when it gets tough. Well, I'm telling you right now, if you just do what we just did, it's a very easy question. But this is a very tough question, because I want you to start to notice these answer choices. Remember what I said, only the idiots look at the answer choices at the very end. 99ers look at the answers always midway through, and honestly always at the beginning as well. So, no, definitely not, Molly. Good question, definitely not, because between, by definition, means between the two. And for you know, on this case, hopefully we're going to know 200 and 220 is definitely not prime anyhow, but if they wanted to include them, they would have to use the words inclusive, but otherwise, definitely not. So, question for you. When you look at these answer choices here, what message are you seeing or receiving from the test maker? Because I would argue the test maker, by giving you these answer choices, is sending you a message. This is an opinion. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are as you look at these answer choices. I think that's fair, Roy. You know there ain't a lot. Definitely not more than 4. That's for sure true. What else do you guys see here? Don't tell me with almost 60 people, I've got 2 people that have a fucking opinion on this? Spelled out. That's good, Jason. For the MFAs in the mix here for our boy. I want to. I love. So I love Andrew's point. I think Andrew's point's a good one too. You know, David's picking up on the 0 bit. You know, like chances are, if these are all positive, then it's probably going to be positive. I think that's a good guess of sorts. But I want to comment on Umar's point here for a second, because I think that's an excellent observation, and Anta seems to be making the same thing, which is great. This is a very close call, guys. Like, I want to be clear on this right now. And so here's another quick question for you. Which question do you think is going to be harder? This one as it exists, so I'll call this the original, or number 2, which is 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. Which question do you think is harder? Question 1 or question 2 here? Again, everything stays the same. These are the answer choices. These are the answer choices. What do you think is harder here? This is not an opinion. This is a fact. Okay, good. So now you guys are starting to see what I want you to be picking up on. This shit's hard. This is very easy. Meaning, in this case, if I look at this and I say, hey, you know what? I got to a 6, let's just say hypothetically, I got to 6. Like, I know it ain't 10, it ain't 15, it ain't 20, it ain't 0, it's got to be 5. I just F this up somewhere by 1. That's the gut in me will tell me that. Like, imagine if I decided, yep, it's 2 over here, for example. Is it really 2? If I'm off by 1, it could be 3. Shit, it could be 1. If I'm off by 2, it could be 4. It could be 0. Like there is no room for error here. Which, as a 99er, it tells me, hey, put your game face on because this is about to get real. Versus this, this is still child's play. The test maker is disrespecting me. This one, he's challenging me. And that itself should then tell you, hey, I better spend more detailed attention on this question. So as you go through this stuff, again, I do not give 2 shits about this low level on the pyramid. If you're here to learn about fractions, wrong place. But if you're here to think about, hey, what do I got to start looking out for so I can get those top scores and crack these tough questions, this is the kind of messaging that I want you to be picking up on. Because I'm telling you right now, at times, the test maker is not whispering to the 1% of us. He's just straight yelling at us. And to me, when he's doing this, he's yelling at me. And if you're looking at this and you're not still seeing that yell, then I need you to start hearing me now, so you're going to start to see it. But some of you, very quickly, when I said, boom, what do you recognize? You're starting to pick up on it nicely. Well, that's what I love to see. So nice work, Umar and Anta. All right, with that then, let's go ahead and tackle this question. I'll give you 2 minutes to do this. You do not need 2 minutes to do this. Again, I think this is just as easy as the last one, but now it's about process and how we do it. So let's put 2 on the clock and then we'll talk. Let's do better than a quarter of the class getting it right, though. And do not be arrogant. Do not be lazy. The arrogant and lazy will quickly start to reveal themselves on this question. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a crack at this question here. So let me express my profound disappointment to start. I thought we started trying to nip it in the bud a few questions back where there's no prize for being in the poll as soon as it opens. Again, I know for a fact if I had opened this poll 30 seconds in, I'd have a bunch of idiots in the wrong answers, like so bad, so quickly. This is where I want you guys to start to develop some discipline. So when the polls opened up with about, I don't know, I think Megan opened them maybe around like the 30-second-ish mark, I forget, with about 10 seconds left. So that means within 20 seconds of the poll being open, I had 82% of you 88%, sorry, straight up wrong. Isn't that sad? Like, is it just me? Like, how are we so confident with the shit that we're doing in the poll right now? It's very important we start to ratchet this down very quickly. Very, very quickly, guys. Because, again, if we stay with this level of satisfaction, which shouldn't be there, kiss the 7 something's goodbye. Everyone can start dialing it back down a notch. So then all of a sudden the 760s should be happy with the 7s, 700 should be happy with the 6s, the 6s should just be happy with the 5s. And the 5s are like, see, you guys should have just been respectful the whole damn time. You guys were delusional on day one thinking you guys were going to get such top scores. Hey, it's not a game where you just sign up and they give it to you. You got to earn it. And it starts with questions like this, in my opinion. Now, ultimately, we got to about 18% right, which I'll be honest is still piss poor in general. Like I said, I'd be thrilled if we get more than a quarter. Usually we get at least a quarter, so this is not a good start, guys. Now, if you got this question wrong because you said, well, I just did this in my head. You know, I got to beat the timer to beat the test, so I'm not going to write this down. I saved some time. You're an idiot. Like, again, you don't have a beautiful mind. You're taking a math class from a guy who sucks at math. So you don't see all these numbers in the sky. There's no shame to dumbing it down and writing them out. Again, start to realize, but this is sad but true. Like, you have to start to, again, like, know your limitations. And for me, that means just write them out. Now, do I need to write out 20 numbers? Hell no. That's a waste of time. You know, obviously, all the even numbers are dead. So just start with the odd ones. How much do you spend? 10 seconds? Okay. 10 seconds well spent. Now, even then, do I need the 5s? No. But I think my OCD requires me to write all the odds out, so I'm done. All right, fine. Then I move on to the second divisibility rule, which is 3. So again, keeps it simple. What am I supposed to do? Add up the digits. Am I going to do this for every single one? Hell no. Who's got time? I gave you 2 minutes. It shouldn't take us 2 minutes. But some of us, even with 2 minutes, we're making random ass guesses in the poll because we're like, oh, damn, we ran out of time. Well, we can't do that. This comes back to what I said is the most important formula, not in your skill builder. All I got to do is find a multiple of 3 plus or minus a multiple of 3 and get them done. So clearly 201 is a multiple of 3. That's the easiest one. You spot it, you see it, you move on. But if I add 3 to that, it gets me to an even number. And I know my even odd properties because I crushed the skill builder. So in order to trigger another odd number, I need to add an even number into the mix. So instead of 3, why don't I just add 6 and get it done? So 201 plus 6 is 207 plus 6 is 213 plus 6 is 219. And I've now just killed all the multiples of 3 because I know what the most important formula not in the skill builder is. And it's just based off stuff you actually learned in the skill builder with the number line divisibility cycles. So now that I'm here, what did almost a third of the class do? Boom, there's my answer. Did I get a 760? What the F are you talking about? I did say that you have to go to the square root of the number. I don't know what the square root of, say, 217 is, for example. Pick the biggest number in the mix. But I know 15 squares is 225, 14 squares is 196, so this thing is really close to 225. So my guess it's like 14.8-ish. So I've got to go all the way up to 14, which means I got to test all the primes to get there, which means I got to get to a 7, I got to get to 11, I got to get to a 13. And a full third, exactly, Carl, I'm glad you see it, man. A full third of you are like, nah, that shit's optional. I don't really need to do that much work. What are you talking about? And so to me, when I look at something like this, I say, dude, You gotta know where your final destination is if you want to even remotely have a shot at getting there. So you keep going. Now, that means I gotta get into the rules for 7. Well, what's the rule for 7? They got a little fancy one. Take the last digit, double it, subtract it, Macarena. It's like, what? I don't need to get that complex. All I need to do is keep in mind universal divisibility, which again, ultimately comes back to this, just multiples plus or minus multiples. So question for you. When you look at this range, 200 to 220, what easy multiple of 7 should pop out in your head there? Yeah, awesome, Jacob. Right on, Maxwell. You look at this and you're like, dude, all I need, great, Jason and Nathan. You look at something like this and you're like, all I need to do is take a 7, multiply it by a 3, get me to a 21, tack on some zeros. Kind of like that multiple of 11 we did earlier. So it's the same sort of concept, just now being used in a slightly different application. So I say, all right, sweet, 210 plus 7, 217, 210 minus 7, 203. I'm now down to 2 potential primes. And would you believe I'm at 65 effing % of you in these dog shit answers. That's what D and E represent, folks, straight up. So again, you know, I'm going to celebrate victories in here, but I'm also not going to be shy to call shit what it is. And so to me, as we go through this should also start to condition me to what kind of guessing I could have made. Meaning, the chances of it being 0, slim. Because especially when I gave me all these positive numbers, so starting to gamble a little bit, I could kind of get that sense, and some of you started saying that, which was great. If you start to think about it also conceptually, the bigger a ranges that they give you, the more likely it is you'll find a prime number somewhere in there. But if you go really high, then chances are you won't. You'll find probably multiples of stuff. So it's a relatively low set of numbers, but it's a relatively big set of numbers, probably some sort of prime in the mix. But there's a dividing line here. Do I want to guess in the BC world or do I want to guess in the DE world? And I'll tell you right now, hopefully now, at least in retrospect, the DE world is not where I want to be. The DE world represents people that ran out of time, people that don't know how to apply divisibility rules, people that don't want to write shit out, people that are absolutely so arrogant to think that they don't need to do a lot of this work. And to me, this is how you start to appreciate how you don't want to be in that group. And so now, exactly, it's the same exact, so you start to see here, and that's spot on, Jacob, because that's why you start to see like things like this, it's all the same. This shit repeats over and over. Like, I don't need to do 1,000 questions. I just need to do a few and start to learn from them. So now I get into the 11, same idea, multiply it by 2, 220. If I add 11, I bust, so I go down by 11, I'm at 209. And now I've done that. So now I'm at the 13s. Okay, keep it simple. All I have is one potential prime. I go either 130, 260. If I do 260, keeping it simple, what's the difference there? 49. Is 49 a multiple of 13? No, 39 is. Okay, I'm done. That number must be prime. This does not take me 2 minutes to do this question. It shouldn't take anybody who's now going to start to follow a process a crazy amount of time. But you start to see how quickly we can unravel on this question. The polls don't lie. This says, by definition, this is the hardest question thus far of the day. But hopefully as you see me break this down, hopefully as you start to see the methodical process that I employed to get there, you could do this. You just chose not to. And those are the kinds of decisions that we need to start to change very quickly. This is week 1. Week 1's, you know, the first week, obviously. But you want to make sure you don't start to get very comfortable with half-assness in here. I'll tell you right now, this always happens. Week 1, we all come out of the gate super excited, super ambitious. By the last day of class, half of you will not be here. Half of you will get chewed up and spat out because you don't want to put in the effort, you don't want to put in the time, you simply don't want to put in the respect factor, and that's a damn shame to me, because this test can be beat. It can be beat, it often is. It just has to be done the right way. So it's got to start with questions like this. This is a bad showing, folks. All right. With that, let's take a look at this question here. It says, how many unique divisors does 222 have? I think this is a nice question. This is a question where, again, you could start to get derailed pretty quickly if you're not keeping in mind what your objective is. Let's put 2 on the clock and then let's talk. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a crack at this question here. Decent showing on this question, but not pretty. Not pretty. So the question is, how are we screwing this up? It'll be interesting to see, what kind of mistakes people are making. Now, question for you, what answer choice should we have eliminated almost instantly on this question, guys? I think most of you steered clear, but not everybody, and I just want to start to see this. Like, this is supposed to be a little bit of a give me, I think. Yeah, all right, great. Like, we should not have been considering infinite, guys. I'm okay with us considering this, and okay, I'll put in air quotes. Easy, exactly. And so as we go through this, you should have been able to say, like, no, it doesn't have an infinite number of divisors. This ain't like the number 0, so to speak. I should have been able to see, yep, there are a finite number of factors. Now, when we look at this, I would argue again, there is a dividing line between the ABs of the world and the CDs of the world, where if I'm going to guess, I should be in a certain section, because the other half will just reveal the arrogant and the lazy, and I want us to be thinking about that. So first things first, notice what I would encourage you to do. It wants to know basically how many factors this has. Just get it to town. 1 to 2, 22, 2 and 1, 11. And you are already at choice A. What the F are a quarter of you now picking choice A for? Think about this for a second. What have you accomplished exactly? I gave you 2 minutes to do a question like this, and a quarter of us are saying, remember, I don't know how this math is going to add up because I suck at math, but if 90% of us on day 1 wanted a 7 something, but a quarter of us are happy picking choice A right now, something is not adding up in my head, at least. Because I know that I have to go to the square root And I don't know the square root of 222, but again, I know 15 squared is 225, so this is like 14.9 something. So I got to get all the way up to at least 14 because I can't go fractional, so I got to go from 2 to 14. Oh, and by the way, I'm not testing primes anymore. I got to test all the composites in the mix too. And a quarter of you said, nah, that shit's for chumps. Give me my choice A and my 760 right now. And it's like, no, dude. You are on the surefire path, if I've ever seen one, to a whopping 400, and that might be generous. So start to either change your approach or change your expectations. I'm not going to change my approach. I want to be arrogant. I want to be lazy. Okay, then that 7 something looks awfully better as a 4 something, and that's okay too, but we have to be real here. Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat things. That may rub you the wrong way. That's all right. That means you ain't serious about this journey. And so what I need to understand about a question like this is that I gotta keep going. So I know it's divisible by 3. That ain't hard. Now what is it? 3 times what exactly? I don't know. I don't care. Because remember what this question is asking you, and this is where as a 99er you start to take a different path than even the guys that are going to get an 89th percentile, which ain't bad. You'll still get into some decent schools. Because this is asking you how many. It's not asking you what. And if I can start to understand what the question's asking and then therefore gear my response towards that, then I realize like I just know this ain't a 3. It's some other number and I'm already at 6 unique divisors potentially. And a full quarter decided, yep, that's my final answer. And it's like, what the F? No. So now, is it divisible by 4? Hell no. Last 2 digits. Divisible by 5? Hell no. Last digits. Divisible by 6? Hell yes, because I got a 2 and a 3. I know it ain't a 6 there, so now I'm automatically down to 8. Like, I'm not even doing anything complex. I'm just having a deep understanding of what I learned in the damn skill builder. So now the question is, do I still keep going from 7 to 14? No. It's going to take me a lot of time. Even though I gave you 2 minutes to do this, I want style points above all else. I ain't going to spend the time I'm allotted on a question. I'm looking to kind of tighten it up so that when I get those questions, I got to spend 3 minutes and 45 seconds on it. It's because I was able to cut 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds from questions everywhere and cobble it all together. So let's put this on pause, because what I'm doing isn't really a great way to go. It's not a bad way. It'll get me there ultimately, better than the 50% of you that ended up eating shit sandwiches to start. But I got to think of something that's going to yield me more style points. And so what I'd encourage you to do is start thinking about prime factorization here. So if I'm at the 222 tip, you know that's 2 and 111. 111, of course, is divisible by 3, and we saw the 37 there, and so we know 37 is prime. And next thing you know, you're done with the factorization on a prime tip level. Now, what is the relationship between this little chart I'm creating and that chart over there? It's just a rearrangement of all those prime factors if you take a step back and think about it. Because this is just going to be all those three factors slammed together some way. All those 3 factors slammed together some way. All those 3 factors slammed together some way, because that's what you're asking for. What are the things that multiply together to get there? Well, if these are the 3 factors, there's got to be some combination. So this is a 1 and a 2, 3, 37. This is a 2 and a 3 and a 37. So if I pull a 3 out here, the only thing that's left missing is a 2 and a 37. So that means this is a 74. Now, how can I double check? Do what we did at the very beginning. 3 times 70, 210. 3 times 4 is 12. 210 plus 12 is 222, and that's what we have. So those multiplication shortcuts, which I didn't want you to learn for those first 2 questions, because I said you got to have that memorized down cold, is now scalable when this, I don't know my 74 by 74 multiplication tables, but you can start to do this kind of stuff in your head. So the same thing. Now if I pull a 2 and a 3 out, then that must mean that this has got to be a 37. Not that I needed to do it, but I want you to start to see how these pieces all come together. Now, all I got to do is say, hey, are there any other combinations of these numbers that I have not gotten to yet? And it's like, no, I feel pretty good that I've multiplied all those 2s and 3s and 37s every which way I could, so I guess I'm done. Choice C becomes my final answer. Now, is that a good way to go? No, that's like my original way was like a C way. This is a B way. So there's an A way to get this done, and we'll get there in a second. But I want to just comment very quickly on this poll. Like, look at the folks in D. in my opinion, D is 1,000 times better answer than an A or a B. And you start to see that right here, and hopefully you saw why. Now, of course, if you're an A, because you forgot that it was the actual divisors themselves, and really you just thought of them as pairs, that's a fail. That's the right answer to the wrong question. That's a low-level trap that you just cannot ever afford to make. Okay, so what is the A approach to getting this done? Well, it's based off of what we just did there. This notion of trying to figure out what are the different ways to throw things together. But it involves a little bit of combinatorics, which we're obviously going to talk about in the last week of class. So for now, just memorize the formula, worry about the derivation later. And so what they say is basically, step one, get the number down into products of basically prime factorization with prime factors and exponents. Then step two, so we got 2, 1, 3, 1, 37, 1. Step two, strip off those exponents, toss the bases, so we got a bunch of 1s. Step three, you add 1 to each exponent always. So now instead of 1s, we now have a bunch of 2s. Step 4, multiply across, and you are done. So of course 2 cubed is 8. This is the A+ way of getting it done, because this takes seconds, not potentially minutes. So now, to kind of just quickly see this in practice here, it says how many unique factors exist for each of the following numbers. So if I had, let's just say 100 real quickly. If I had 100, old me would say, okay, that's just 1 in 100, 2 in 50, 3 no, 4 in 25, 5 in 20, 6 no, 7 no, 8 no, 9 no, 10 in 10. And so I came up with 9 unique divisors. Was that a good move? Hell no. Why? Because it didn't ask me what, it asked me how many. So I already screwed this up. Even though it didn't take me that long, I still screwed it up. Spent way too much time on it. So what should I have been doing instead? Well, the new me would just bust out the shortcut. Now check it. Another thing that you need to be able to do is take your dart, throw it on the 15 by 15 grid, and have the prime, base, and exponent factorization down immediately. Like if you're factor treeing on this test on any one of those numbers on the grid, I think you're effing it up. So when I see 100, which I know is on my grid, that just comes out as a 2 squared, 5 squared. Like that's just immediate. You're not dicking around. Then you say, okay, let's strip the exponents, toss the bases, add 1, multiply through. You're at 9. Now you might say, well, that took you 10 seconds, that took you 3 seconds, so you saved 7 seconds, big deal. 7 seconds is a big deal, first of all, but you're not looking at it the right way. I saved 70% of my time. 70%. Who doesn't want to save 70%? Everybody should want to save 70%. All right, question. Take a look at this guy here. It says, how many multiples of 3 exist between -10 and 10? What do you think? You know, remember I started talking on Monday, low-level trap answers, high-level trap answers, so on. What do you think is the high-level trap answer on this question? What do you think someone who has a decent understanding, but is just going to F it up at the finish line and just trip right before running through the tape? What are they going to pick on this question? What do you think on this? No, don't say 3, guys. Get out of here. Yeah, so those of you that are saying, this is interesting, man, why are you going to say 9? All right, so let's rewind back. The correct answer, in my opinion, is 6. And Nathan, Mr. Rogers, is 100% correct. Again, let's be clear. I do definitely think that people will pick choice A. Like if I ran the poll, guaranteed, at least with some of the carnage that's already in the poll thus far, people will be like, oh yeah, choice A. I didn't need 30 seconds to do this question. I did this in 3. It is a 3-second question, and you didn't even have a shot at getting it right. Why? Because where are all the negatives? I get 3, 6, 9. You got the -3, -6, -9. I exactly did it while you were talking. Precisely. So when you look at this, you start to realize, again, it comes back to multiples plus or minus multiples equaling multiples. All you got to do is add 3 to everything if you want. So it's like, okay, boom, boom. Then what do? You just somehow just skip all this and go boom, boom. So yeah, there's 3, so there's a total of 6. You can't do that. That's fuzzy math. 0 is a multiple of every single number. In fact, all the multiples start there, and you add or subtract from that point if you actually want to take a step back and think about it. So yeah, definitely 7 multiples. But for the record, high-level trap is 6, choice C. Low-level trap is A. I do not want to be seeing A as my high-level trap. That's going to start to be of concern here. And again, high-level, low-level is all me in my opinion, and I think that's important to realize. Now, because 0 is a multiple of every number, because 0 is a multiple of 2, that then renders it an even number. Just want to make sure you realize that. Yeah, exactly. You can't divide by 0. That would be essentially infinite and undefined of sorts. All right, with that then, I want to bring us to this first data sufficiency question. This first data sufficiency question is a very good one. First of all, as a reminder, this is where the answer choices never change. So when you start to look at this, I want you to keep in mind that 1, 2, 10 is a great example for week 1 and week 1 only. Statement 1 alone sufficient, statement 2 alone sufficient. Together they're sufficient, each is sufficient. Even together they're not sufficient at all. That's the 1 to 10 mindset. After week 1, we definitely don't want to be talking 1 to 10. It's a waste of time. It's low-level strategy. You just don't want to have them memorized. Question says, is integer y divisible by 24? That's a yes-no question. The answer to that question isn't, oh, y is 3. They don't care about what y is. In this particular case, they just want a yes or a no out of your mouth. If you can give them a yes, always yes, it's sufficient. If you can give them a no, always no, it's sufficient. It's just when you're stuck shrugging your shoulders like, I don't know, maybe it's yes, maybe it's no, then that means you don't know, it's not sufficient. These are statements. They're facts. They are given to you. Take them as that. And ask yourself, if I have one of these facts, can I answer the question being asked? That's all. That's what data sufficiency is. Be careful on this question. I know what the number 1 wrong answer is going to be. Question is, do you? As we go through this question, have that awareness start to develop. Remember, I don't care about right answers in here most of the time. I want to see right answers in the poll, but I want us thinking much more about these tempting wrong answers. That's the way I start to avoid them on test day. Think like the test maker, the top of the pyramid, folks. So, let's put 2 on the clock. Let's bring some more respect, guys. There's a lot of disrespect starting to come in on these last few questions. It's starting to look ugly. I don't want to see ugly in here. Let's put 2 on the clock. Let's get this done, and then we'll get into our final break. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. So let me ask you this to start. What is the number one wrong answer in the poll right now? What did you see coming a mile away and you said, I ain't gonna pick that. That shit's radioactive. What did you see? What did you avoid? So let's be clear, it is definitely choice C. Now, there are some people that are in B as well. B is a low-level trap in my opinion. And B usually might come about because you meant to combine the stuff. But I think choice C is the quote-unquote high-level trap, and I get that. There are plenty of people in D. This shit's even, and this saddens me even more so perhaps, because this is just I'll call it a week one trap. Because really that just means, hey, I don't even understand data sufficiency yet. I just started. Well, okay, I kind of get that. And you're probably doing questions backwards if that's the case. Like, oh yeah, if I know it's a multiple of 24, is it a multiple of 6? It's like, no, you're effing this up. Remember, these are the facts that are given to you. You got to come back and you got to be able to ask yourself if you can answer the question being asked. Now, check it. This is a divisibility question. You already know how I translate divisibility questions. This is just asking me, is it a multiple of 24 or 24 times INT? But in my experience, divisibility questions all come down to essentially prime factorization. That's the way at least I like to tackle it. So when I see a 24, it's already on my grid, so I'm not sitting there factor treeing this. I know this is really 2 cubed times 3. So the question really is does y have 3 2's and a 3 in it? That's really what the question's asking. Well, look at what statement 1 and statement 2 are about. Statement 1 says, hey, y is a multiple of a 2 and a 3. Statement 2 tells me it's a multiple of 2 2's. I am not a number picker. In fact, there are some that believe in number picking every single chance they get. I can tell you right now, no 99er ever walks out of the quant section going, damn, I crushed 31 quant questions because I number picked 31 times. Doesn't happen. Number picking is a low-level strategy to be employing across the board. Now, does that mean you can't ever number pick? No 99er goes, damn, I crushed 31 quant questions I never number picked. Doesn't happen that way either. But I can tell you right now, number picking and back solving for that matter should be reserved for like plan C and plan D, not plan A or plan B. Plan A is usually algebra, plan B is usually conceptual. And so instead, what I would encourage you to do is look at this from a conceptual basis. So in this case, if I know that y, by definition, has a 2 and a 3 as factors in it, but I want to know, that's my question, if it has 3 2's in it, it looks like I'm missing a couple 2's in statement number 1. Maybe they are there in that integer. Maybe they're not. That is why statement 1 is not sufficient. I do not need to pick a number to figure that out. A and D, dead on arrival. Same thing with statement number 2. I know there are 2 2's there, but I want to know if there's a third 2 and a 3 in the mix. Maybe they're hiding there in that integer. It is a multiple of it after all, but maybe they're not. Which is why even statement 2 is dead. I'm down to C or E within seconds. Not picking numbers, I don't need to. I'm thinking just conceptually moving this along. But if I wanted to, I could say, hey, how about y is 6? It would give me a no answer. How about y is 24? It would give me a yes answer. Or in this case, I say, how about y is 4? Gets me a no answer. How about y is 24? Gets me a yes answer. But if I F up my number picking, I'm like, oh yeah, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Hey, they all give me a no. And this idiot said, as long as it's a no or a yes, you're fine. So clearly always no, I'm good to go, super sufficient. And it's like, no, you didn't go far enough. You didn't even try to break the model that you had. So number picking is suspect, guys. A lot of people do it in a shitty way and they end up eating shit as a result. Don't be that guy. Much better to start thinking on these divisibility questions, I think, conceptually. So now I'm down to 50-50 C or E on this. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to combine this. And just like you guys started to say here, you start to look at this and you're like, oh yeah, if y is divisible by 6, y is divisible by 4. That must mean y is divisible by 24, choice C, final answer. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You learned how to do the LCM, right? I'm pretty sure you did. It's in the skill builder. And at that point, what does it say? Take the highest power of every factor. If I take the highest power of every factor, look at what I'm dealt with. This is an easy question. This tells me I got 2 2s and a 3. I want to know if there's a third 2 in there. Maybe it's there, hiding. Maybe it's not. Choice C is out, E all day long. Now again, if I want to pick numbers, I could say, hey, what if Y is 12? What if Y is 24? 12 is no, 24 is yes. You can't waffle on this test. So when you look at a question like this, I gave you 2 minutes to do it. Does it require 2 minutes? It depends on how much brute force you want to exert, how much suspect number picking you want to employ. Again, it takes me much longer to talk about it than it does to execute. And so even in the solution stations, I've uploaded some videos for like how I would do certain questions, because some of you are going to start to say like, hey, I like the way, because I don't always do it by the way the book did it. The book doesn't do it this way, and that's okay. So I have tackled a few more questions using divisibility with this kind of methodology, so feel free to check that out as well. Okay. And so here, is an example where they just kind of, what the hell? Where they kind of throw out a number line. I wouldn't do this, but clearly you could start to see it where you start to get the no's and the yeses in the mix. All right, I want to wrap up this section, guys. Notice this last point here. It says this family is not merely a collection of skills, but rather a way of thinking. I think this lesson is starting to be an eye-opening one for many of you, and that's okay. It's week 1. I came in a little bit confident, borderline cocky. I got my ass handed to me. I ain't coming back week 2 this way. Hey, that's a win. If instead you're saying to yourself, well, I got my ass handed to me, but I should have had this. I'll do the better next week, but not really do anything different. I don't have a lot of confidence. All right, with that then, let's go ahead and take our final break of the day, folks. Let's put 5 on. We'll get into number properties and slowly start to finish out the lesson after. All right, guys, let's. All right, my bad on that one. Let's go ahead and get into this next section. But I want to comment on, just to follow up on this quote of the day too that just came my way. I want to make sure we understand something. Like, you know, I've been private chatting with quite a few of you here today off and on. And if I'm not doing well today, I don't want to be depressed and ready to kind of jump in the bathtub after class, bring my finest electrical appliances and call it a night. That's not the way I want to do this. Instead, I want to start to figure out a few things. One, am I effing it up in class because I haven't come prepared? A decent portion of you fall into that camp, and that's okay. You got to sort that out. Hey, dude. What do you mean? I'm a touchy-feel-good kind of instructor, Gabby. I thought that was actually quite bright. So that's the first thing I want to say. Tony, don't plug him in just yet. Just wait. It gets better. So the one thing I would say quite electric. There we go, Nathan. Nice play. So first thing I would say, if you did not come to class prepared and all you did is just mail in the skill builder, or you crushed it after taking the quiz 6 times, you clearly didn't crush it. You got to do better next week. So if that's the first camp, let that be a kick in the face to do it right next week. If it's this second group, which is, no, dude, I crushed that shit. I'm just so good at everything that I do in my life that when I look at some of these stupid questions, the right answer immediately pops out at me. It's just kind of weird that you keep telling me it's not the right answer and you keep showing me that it's the fucking trap answer. And it's like, well, that's because you are one arrogant SOB. Get off your high horse. I wouldn't be wasting my time or your time in here going through questions that everyone's going to get right. The whole point of this is to learn, which means someone's going to make a mistake and you keep thinking that no one could ever get this wrong, so clearly you are that guy. That respect issue, you need to work on that. That may not be a skill builder prep issue. That may be more of a psychological issue, and that's something that you got to see if you can fix between now and next Monday. Let's say I'm in the third group. What's the third group? I'm not disrespectful. I have come to class and prepped, but I'm just not kind of seeing it. That's okay. Like, there's no reason, and that's why I just want to comment on this, like, there's no reason to be scared of shit or anything of that sort. It's like, I get it's been a long time for some of us since we've been in school, since we've learned, so on and so forth. The good news is this ain't a test that you can cram. In fact, people that try die. This is a test that just kind of rewards you for style. Style over substance, man. If I suck at math, again, the fact that I might be 50 and I haven't done math, it don't matter, man. I can't tell you, like, again, like I said, one of the greatest success stories I ever had was just from some lady who was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. But she had the will to do it, and then she put in the time to do it. And it wasn't by doing crazy brute force math or crazy brute force English or whatever, but it's just starting to understand what this test is about. So, like I said, the first hour, the first day, in my opinion, the most important. Because if I can understand what this test is going to measure, then I'm going to start to practice the way I'm going to be expected to play. And that's all that matters, folks. This test can be beat. Anybody can do it. It's just a matter of who chooses to do it and how they choose to do so. And that's really what I want to make sure we understand. But if between week 1 and week 6 I keep putting in dog shit efforts because I'm lazy and I'm arrogant and so on, don't imagine you're going to be that guy who crushes it because you're like, hey, this idiot keeps saying anybody can beat it, so that's going to be me. No. For fucking like 5-6 weeks straight, all you keep doing is putting forth a shit performance. Like, what do you think is going to happen? No. So let's make sure we start to understand that. All right, with that then, let's get into some number properties next. I want to take a look at a couple of these things. Some of the stuff we've already done, like units, digits, for example. So look at this question here. It says, what is the units digit of 15 to the 9 minus 16 to the 6? So think about here what makes this so challenging. Arguably the large number, the weird number, that's what can make it kind of tough, and I get that. If this question were a lot easier in terms of the numbers that were picked, everybody would get it right. But it's the same concept or principle that's being tested. Now, of course, my hope is you start to pick up on the test maker screaming out at you. What's the test maker screaming? Don't do all this math. We just want to know units digits. So use units digits as a strategy. And that's okay. But now let's rewind back on this. Let's just say it didn't say that. And instead it had, what is 15 to the 9 minus 16 to the 6? It had a bunch of long-ass numbers out there. So what are we going to do? Oh, it's time to start doing some long multiplication. No, I said on day 1 and now day 2, you're a loser if you do long multiplication. This test will not reward that kind of effort. So the fact that as a 99er, you're screaming at me that I got to do units digits, and that's exactly what I got to do. So it's just about starting to dumb things down and get this going. So you know when you see a 15, start the process. 15 times 15. Hopefully you know 15 squared. Even if you don't, that's all right. 5 times 5 is 25. You know your units digit there. I don't know, multiply it by another 15, get me to a 5. So that's pretty straightforward. Now I start to feel like a pattern has been established. Same thing on the 16 tip. Hopefully, so check it. Aside from the 15 by 15 tables, I would strongly recommend you have 16 squared and 25 squared down cold. You see those numbers often enough. So hopefully you know 16 squared at that point. But let's just say you don't. That's all right. 6 times 6 is a 36. Multiply it by another 6. And you feel pretty comfortable getting to a 6. Again, this is just part of the dumbing things out. No one needs to have these memorized. You're just trying to find patterns. But question for you now. If you get this far, as usually the vast majority of people are pretty capable of doing, how do you think someone gets suckered on a question like this? Where do you think they tap out right now? Because again, they just are disrespectful people in general. They look at tests like this and courses like this as just a joke, a mere formality to get them to HBS on that full ride. But they ain't gonna get there, not with performances like this. Yeah, exactly, Sean. Exclamations only, man, though. In this case, it is choice A, because you say, yeah, 5 minus a 6 is a 1. This ain't complicated, so boom, there's my final answer. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's slow down for a second. I get that 15 is smaller than 16, but you know this 9 is much bigger than a 6. So before you know it, that 15 is going to get to be huge. In that case, then I got a 5, I got a 6, I got to subtract it. Well, I can't take 5 minus 6. I got to be able to borrow, as they say. And 15 minus a 6 is not a 1. It's a 9. Do you think it's a coincidence that the guy put an 1 up there for you to pick it? It ain't no coincidence. It's just a way to weed you out. Someone's got to come to my mail order MBA program. And thus, if they just put a 9 there, even the guy who should be coming to my mail order MBA program will probably find his way to the right answer. Because you get this far, how far is it really to take you to keep going? But the fact that he gives you an A and he wraps it up in a nice little red shiny bow and he's like, here, take it, it's all yours. Don't you want it? Are you sure? Come on, take it. You take it, and you're just graduating from my school, and you don't want to graduate from my school. So as we go through these questions, start to be on the lookout for some of these things. That's what this is about. This next question involving even odd properties is a good question, but it's really a divisibility question at its core. We already tackled divisibility with data sufficiency, so take a look at it later. I want to get into this last question involving really positive, negative number properties. And positive, negative number properties are very important. You got to know them well. Those are important number properties to have. And how do you start to know that number properties involving positive and negatives are being tested? Because a lot of what we're going to do between now and test day is pay attention to triggers that tell us how to respond. That's how I think you got to start thinking about takeaways. Like, what did I learn about this question? Well, if I was presented with something, this is how I should tackle it. And these are some of the best practices I should use to employ to get there. Like, that's how this whole journey is. If instead it's like, oh, that's a good question. All right, answer is C. Okay, that's what I learned. Let's move on. What the F? You didn't learn anything from that question. So for me, as an example, I look at a question like this and I say, oh, anchored to a 0 with an inequality? Thank you, test maker, for again screaming into my ear, not whispering anymore, but screaming into my ear that this is clearly about positives and negatives. Okay, sweet. Now I just got to think about it that way. So question for you, when you look at statement number 1, what should I be able to tell about its signs when they tell me XY is 16? What should I be able to figure out? Great. You're telling me, look, man, they're going to be the same sign. They're both going to be positive or negative for sure. Absolutely right. Now, for me, pro tip, the way I like to actually put my signs, I just tend to put them right underneath the variable in question. So I'd say both positive, both negative, like that. And if you notice, it could be sometimes positive, it could be sometimes negative. Clearly not sufficient on the statement 1 tip, A and D dead on arrival. But I should have killed A and D right off the bat because I saw Y in the mix. How the hell am I going to figure out X's sign if there's a Y there? So for that reason, even statement 2 should be shot. I should be down to 50-50 within seconds. So if data sufficiency kind of rocks your world, and it usually does for those that start this journey, mark my words, by the end of week 4, it will become your new best friend on the quant side of things. Because right now, with no effort, I'm 50-50. I just recognize I can't figure out X if I got Y. Boom. Final answer, C or E. Let me guess and see what happens. That ability to eliminate answers immediately is a beautiful thing in data sufficiency. And you could start to even make some better guesses off of that. We'll talk more about that stuff in the weeks ahead. So now, statement number 2, I should at least go through some of the motions now that I'm actually going to have to combine it. And of course, when I have two things added up, I got to consider the possibilities of signs. They can both be positive. One could be positive, one could be negative. One could be negative, one could be positive. And I might be tempted to say they could both be negative. That's a fourth combination potentially. But I can't have two negative numbers add up to a positive number, so that's not an outcome I should have ever really considered. Even if I wrote it down, that's fine, but at least cross it out. And then again, you start to see, oh yeah, I could have positive, negative variation, so clearly statement 2 was out. But now this is where, as a 99er, you start to really show off your understanding of what the question's asking, but more importantly, that you're willing to take those helping hands from the test maker when he gives them to you. Like, because right now he gave it to me, it's all about the signs. So now I just tackle this from a science-based perspective. I could have done it algebraic. I'd be like, oh, I guess I got to solve for X. I got two equations, two variables, but they're not linear, so I got to do the quadratic. Then I'll factor. I'll get multiple answers for X. But if they're always yes or always no, I'm good to go. So let me now do the algebra. It doesn't take me long. I'll get it in less than 2 minutes. So great. I get the question the right way. In fact, when I read the official guide and the explanation, it lays it out that way. So yeah, man, awesome. I'm on that road to the 99. It's like, what the F? Let me be clear. I'm going to insult the textbook often. The textbook is typically the official guide. I'm going to say that's the textbook way of doing it. Textbook way is never something, I shouldn't say never, but is usually not the way you ever want to do anything. There's no style that comes from doing things the textbook way. And if I can understand that, despite when I read the explanation, it shows it that way, you start to say, hey, there's got to be a better way. And so even here, when you start to look at this and you say, hey, I know this is testing me on signs, and if statement 1 tells me that they're the same signs, and statement 2 tells me these are the only outcomes possible, I have no clue what X is, but the thing that holds true when both statements are actually combined is that X must be positive. I don't know what X is, but I don't care. Because again, what the question's asking me, I've managed to accomplish. Choice C within seconds. And so you always want to be asking yourself as you start to go through these questions, am I doing it, again, the way I should? Is there a better way? Is there a cleaner way? And I started, I think, commenting on the first day, 99ers are never content with however much time we put forth on a question. We're always asking, how can we tighten it further? All right, with that then, I want to wrap up the world of number properties. I want to get into some ratios next. Ratios are pretty straightforward. They're very fraction friendly in essence, I think, especially when you start to deal with them as two-part ratios like this. I think if I have more than 2 parts, I tend to write them this way. I personally never write it the equation way. You can do it that way. I have no problem with it, but a lot of people butcher this and screw it up, so just be careful. What I love about this approach, though, is that the multiplier's in the mix, but I like to bastardize these approaches and bring the multiplier there, so whatever works really is all that matters. So I want to take a look at this next question here. This question is a great question. And again, when I say great this time, it really is very easy. It's not a tough question. Sometimes I suppose I say nice and interesting and great and they're always effing hard, but this is a very easy question. But I don't want it to fool you, because I will tell you right now, in my opinion, forget trap answer. In my opinion, there is a straight up drop the course now. Veritas is closed. You can't call them and tell them you've changed your mind. You want to end the journey. But I would strongly recommend you consider doing that first thing in the morning. Again, It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but this should be an eye-awakening moment right now on this question. This is a do-or-die question, in my opinion. Because mathematically, it's not a tough question. But it does require us to check our ego at the door. If we tackle a question like this and we say to ourselves, like, man, this is so effing easy, you're probably in that drop the course mode. Especially if all you've been doing today is struggle, struggle, struggle. If you've struggled all day long, this question is not that easy. But if you haven't struggled, then this is an easy question. But the reason I want us to tackle this question, I'll give you a minute to do it. It doesn't take more than a minute. Because I want us to start to develop that restraint. Because even if I don't know what the right answer is, I'll tell you what as a 99er I do. I go, that looks too easy. F it, it must be something else. And then I just make that guess. And if I'm doing that as a 99er, what the F? Some of you guys are on the frickin' 39th percentile train. You best be doing that. Not be like, I'm a 39er. And at this point, this answer seems like the good one to me. I'm going to pick it. What? No. Hell no. Have more respect than that. So with that, let's put a minute on the clock. Let's do this right. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's slowly get into this question here. Good news is not a lot of you will be leaving us. Bad news, a decent number of you will be leaving us. So, question, again, tongue-in-cheek, but I want this to be the ass awakening at this point. If not, then this is bad. What is the drop the course answer, folks? What do you think someone, if they picked them, you should say bye. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Exactly. Now, that is really nice that you guys are starting to see that. Absolutely choice D. Like, let me be clear on this. If someone picked choice A, I could teach them. Like, they look at this and they're like, 2, 5, is that 25? I don't know. I count on my fingers and toes. I could teach that. I can. I could teach you. You're wrong. You're clearly wrong. There's people in choice A, let me be clear. You're so off, but I could teach you math. I could do that. It's not a good use of your money and time, but I could do it. If you're in choice D, I'm wondering what the F I can do. I like to think I can make miracles happen. I can't do this, though. Because you start to disrespect fundamentally what this test is about. You're fundamentally saying to me, dude, 2 out of 5? What the F? Don't you guys have any tough questions? Like, I signed up to kick the crap out of this test, and this is what you want to test me on in class? It's like, I regret to inform you, but you're not interested in seeing tough questions. The floor is more important than the ceiling. Remember that? We talked about that the first day? The stuff that's below your pay grade? That's the stuff you got to be able to get right. Don't worry about the sexy stuff at the top. You ain't ever going to see them. That's the reality check you need to understand. So, question for you. When you looked at this question here, I'm going to argue that in word problems, words matter. What would you say is the single most important word in this question? It's a bit of an opinion, but let's see if we can all agree. I think it's a fact. Yeah, very nice, guys. I would agree. Maxwell, Nathan, Vivian, Kelsey, Patrick, Roy, Raju, Sean, Jacob. It definitely is closest. I love that. Great, Anton, Kylie. You know, to me, whenever, remember it goes back to the test maker? The test maker is constantly trying to whisper something to me. And in this case, what's he trying to whisper? Straight up that it is all about just rounding. He's not even whispering. He's not yelling at me. And I think that's important to realize. And so then I say, okay, sweet. That means I could take the day off. I don't got to do any math. Not that on this question I'd want you to even approximate. To be honest, I need you to have memorized this answer in a sense. But let's just get there first. So notice what he says. In a solution, the ratio of alcohol to water, so A to W, is 2 to 5. So that means there are 7 total parts. Then it says the percent of alcohol by volume. Volume of what? The damn total. So that means what is 2 out of 7? That's what this question is about. Like, again, this isn't hard, but I got a grip of you saying, no, choice D for the win. No, choice D to drop. So, this, do I want you to approximate this? No 99 is going to approximate this crap. We have this memorized down cold. One thing you need to do is I would memorize all my fraction decimal equivalents with 1 in the numerator, 2 through 10 in the denominator. So 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/7, that's 0.143. Double that, 286. I come up here, I'm like, choice B, final answer. Like, I'm not dicking around with time on this. I'm not going, oh, closest to, that's a gift. It's a gift on other questions. I want you to see it here and now. But when the question's like this, you run with it and you never look back. But let's just say for a second we don't have all this down, and that's okay. What is it that I want you to do? I want you to approximate. You know 2 out of 7 is somewhere between a 2 out of 6 and a 2 out of 8. You know the bigger the denominator, the smaller the number. So what's 2/6? You got to at least know that as 1/3, 33%. That goes too big. What's 2/8? That's 1/4, 25%, too small. Okay, so you kind of triangulate into the right answer at that point. Not that I want that done here, but it can be. So you see in the poll here. Now some of you may be like, well, damn you gave me a minute though. I needed like 2 minutes on this. Did you really though? This is 1 sentence. Oh no, I take that back. It's 2 sentences-ish. 2 sentences, a minute to get to 2 out of 7. That's not that long. And plus I gave you more than a minute. I always kind of come back up here with a leisurely stroll. But the reason I want to illustrate this question and accentuate the importance of this question is because of that. I hate seeing people in D. It always happens. But I want, like I said, this to be that fire under your ass. So next week, if you come back, and I want everyone to come back, but if the GMAT journey ain't for you, then I also want it to be real. I want to save you time. I want to save you money. But if you come back, you can't be pulling moves like D. That stuff is very tough for me to correct ever. And if it's tough for me to correct ever, I can tell you right now, you're going to spend a lot of time and money doing it, and you ain't going to be able to. So that's what I mean fundamentally about bringing respect. This is a basic ratio question. There's nothing to it. I want to do this ratio question next. I think this is a good question. And again, this is a little bit more complex. Not a tough question, but bring respect. Again, if you do not know what the sucker answer here is, you're picking it. Just like the way you guys knew what the drop the course answer was. Let's put a minute 30 on this one. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this. I want to comment real quickly on what I dubbed the quote of the course. I just got this from somebody who arguably picked the drop the course answer just now. And obviously, I don't sugarcoat in here. But like I said the other day, I'm not here to make friends. My welcome email says as much. I got enough of those. I am here to create GMAT champions. That's it. I hate customers. I already said that at the beginning of class, I think, today. Like, if you come at me like, oh, I'm a customer. Oh, fuck customers. Let customer service deal with that. I'm here to teach students that are hungry, that are humble, and that are willing to put in the time and effort to come to class prepared and ready to participate and rock it. If that's you, you will love this journey. If that's not you, and instead you want a participation trophy, and you want a safe space, and you want to be told how smart you are every single class, despite drop the course answer after drop the course answer, this won't be for you. You can go sing Kumbaya. We have so many other instructors that'll hold your hand, tell jokes, be happy, cheerful, not talk about being in a toaster or being in a bathtub with a blender, I suppose. And you'll get a solid 5-10. And you'll be like, what the F? But you told me I was great. Those are the calls to customer service that I never want to field. But for me, it's like, oh yeah, man. The guy told me I should drop the course. Hey, did he save you any money? That to me is, I think, the bigger question. So, I love it. People that are hungry, stay here and let's do this. So, question. What is the classic trap answer on this one? What is someone likely to pick? Blenders are good, Kylie. Not no Vitamix, though. Those things are rip-offs. But I secretly want to get one. So, see, Megan's got priorities. So, what is the classic trap answer on this, guys? It is indeed choice D. Kylie's got the question. That was the question of the day. I will start doling out question of the days. That was a good question. Absolutely. I love that you guys see choice D right now. Now, are there a decent number of people in choice D? Absolutely. And they're going to be pissed off right now because they're going to say, I did this right. I did the damn skill builder. I understand that there's 14 total parts. I know there's 420 hours grand total. I know that's a 30x multiplier because I know 3 times 14 is 42. That's on the grid. So what the hell? I did 3 times 30, got to 90, choice D, final answer. Like, how are you telling me now that this is a shit move? This is starting to get frustrating. It's starting to get frustrating now. You've been freaking picking trap answer after trap answer all day long. Like, now is where it gets frustrating? So, question for you. What is the most important word in this question that clearly people that are picking choice D, I would argue, are reading, but they're not internalizing here? Yeah, let that stream down. Abso-freaking-lutely. When you hit question words, slam the brakes, guys. Slam the brakes and turn your car off and push that shit. Like, with one foot out and you're rolling it and you're pushing it, that's how slow you want to go. That might be quote of the day too, Sean. I'm going to say to you, let these burn right now, Because, again, we can't afford to let these kinds of mistakes happen over, because it's a false negative. You know how to, anybody who can do this knows how to do the underlying math. That's what should be unacceptable if I'm on the other end. Because I can't teach you anything here. What am I going to teach you? Read? I can't teach you that. If you're going to get a quant question wrong, get it wrong because you don't know quant. I can teach quant. Megan can teach quant. Don't get it wrong because you can't read. I can't teach you how to read. I expect you to read. And so when you look at something like this, we automatically condition ourselves to think, oh, small number must be slowest. But no, this was not about speed. This was about time. Speed and time are inversely proportional. I had to go with the big boy in this case, which is the 7, 210 final answer. So it's like, if choice D were not on the board, do I think those people would have come to the right answer? Absolutely. Now the A's, C's, and E's, that just tells me, hey, I didn't do the skill builder. I don't know how to do this stuff. Okay. Week 1, you start to realize, like, yeah, day 1, dude, I don't got to do anything. I just got to kind of walk us through what the test is about and get into some logic. Day 2, shit gets real. So as we start to get into next week, hey, we start to get a sense of like, oh man, so when he says come to class prepared, this is what he means? You bet. All right, take a look at this one here. It says the ratio of kids age 3, 4, and 5 at a kindergarten is 7, 11, 9, respectively. If the number of 3-year-olds increases by 7, but the number of 4 and 5-year-olds stays the same, so in this case, we got the 3, the 4, the 5, the 7, 11, 9. The 3-year-olds increased by 7. 4 and 5 stayed the same. They didn't change. The new ratio will be blah, blah, blah. What do you think the classic sloppy mistake is right now? What is someone likely to do once they get this far? And again, they say, hey, this ain't hard. I know how to do this. Yeah, absolutely. Be careful. It is definitely choice B. Because you just say, hey man, all I got to do is just add 7 and boom, I'm at 14, 14, 11, 9. But it's like, well, wait a minute. If it's just that easy, who's going to miss it? Like, you know, for example, like just even going back to this poll here, like the AC, you know, the ACEs, I said, hey, that just means we just don't know how to do ratios. Like if I'm doing this question right now, my only thing that's on my rear view mirror is the guy who's picking D. I don't even see the A's, C's, and E's. They're so, you know, it's like the marathon runners. Like those guys that finish the marathon, like, what is it, 2 hours, under 2, over 2, whatever it is. It's not me. Like that guy doesn't see the guy like me who's huffing at like the 6-hour mark and just like trying to sit there and crawl over. Like he does not even see me. I don't register. That's what the A's, C's, and E's start to represent. And so even on a question like this, when I look at something like this, the only guy who's in my rear view mirror is the guy who's in B. I don't see anybody in the A and the C and the D because I start to say like those guys just don't understand ratios. But the B's, he kind of understands it. He's just not as good as me. And that's who you always have to keep your eyes peeled for here. Because again, if there were 7 kids, 11 kids, 9 kids, of course this is the right answer. But what if this is a massive online experience with the 700 kids in there? If I had 7, dude, the frickin' instructor or teacher is not even going to notice that 7th kid or the 7 kids. Like, if I had 700, what's the difference? Now my ratio is almost the same exact thing. It's like 7.07 to 11 to 9. So what am I supposed to take away? Well, dude, when I am adding and subtracting these absolute numbers without knowing original quantities, I can't figure this out. It's impossible. And that to me is just a conceptual understanding. But again, why do they give me that B? Someone's got to come to my program, man. You pick those B's, you're coming to my program. I'm not going to give you a diploma, I'll sell you a diploma. So now start to take a look at this guy. Oh my kindergarten, hey dude, I think we're identifying business opportunities, Jacob. So all I need is a smart board, dude. My daughter's gonna be starting kindergarten next week, dude. I should suggest this as an experience. All right, so take a look at this. It says the ratio of kids aged 3, 4, and 5 at a kindergarten is 7, 11, 9 respectively. The number of 3-year-olds doubles, but the number of 4 and 5-year-olds stays the same. The new ratio will be. So start to notice here the key word, doubling. I'm no longer adding or subtracting absolute numbers. Now it's more of a proportion of the original. And if it's a proportion of the original, then what am I doing? I'm just doubling it up. And so now whether it's 7 kids, 11 kids, 9 kids, and now it's 14, 11, 9, or 700, 1100, 900, in which case it's 1400, 1100, 900, or still 14, 11, 9, I could get away with it. So the fact pattern looks the same. But it's those details that start to make the difference. So if I'm like, oh shit, I didn't see that, great. Write it down. Write it down, not, oh, the answer is B, or no, the answer is E, the sucker answer is B. That doesn't help you. You're never going to see the same question again. But it's about conceptually, what do you wish you knew before tackling the question? Or what do you wish that, say I was there at test center and I'm whispering something into your ear, whatever you want me to whisper, but I can't see the question exactly? Then at that, and you can't tell it to me because you get busted by the proctor, then you've got to always be thinking about being able to phrase it in ways that assist you down the road. That's what solid takeaways are all about, folks. All right, with that then, I want to get into some percents here. I think some percents are a good part of this test here. Because a lot of people don't really do percents the right way. Hey, I love that, Molly. I think that's generally good advice, and especially the second one. You know, the stop and read shit. We got to be able to do that. So let that be the slap of face. But I love that second comment that you wrote, because I'll be honest. Those of us that start to get, good job, Gurpreet. Those of us that start to get jacked enough, it wasn't even last week, Nathan. That was Monday night, man. 48 hours, how they've scarred you. But dude, the GMAT's got, I'm telling you, it's like, you think you've seen bad prison movies. You don't know it until you get to the test center. But yeah, man, now you're really making me sound dark now that I say about that. It's been a long week. It's the arithmetic skill builder. It'll do it to you. Hilarious. All right, so I want to get into just a little bit of calculation. We'll take a look at one or two questions and slowly call it a night here. So let's make sure we start to understand. Exactly. And you know what? You say that now, Sean, but some people, you know, I've had some classes that have suggested that a lot of what I teach is also very applicable to dating. So whether you then interpret that to mean my darkness is also very dating friendly, I don't know. But I would argue that I've got quite a bit of versatility here with what I'm teaching. So the one thing that I will say, just getting into percents, back on track here. Exactly, life coach, baby. So the one thing that I will say as we get into these percents is how important it is to just, again, shortcut what we've already learned here. That's good, Jacob. That's good. Well played. Dude, I feel like someone else had a pretty decent pun earlier. Retweet. That's good. Dude, oh, it's actually, now we're really getting off topic here, but I don't know if you guys, because I think the success story that I sent you the other day was with a guy who said, you know, like, I'm going to be, we had a guy in our class whose name was Wee, and he was really a good sport, and his name was spelled like this, and so the whole class, I think, he made it a point to just basically turn a pun out of his own name for the rest of the whole, and everyone else started doing it. It was hilarious. So that's why, if you guys were scratching your head and you were wondering why the hell we were saying QUY to make a wee sound, that's the reason why. So I like some of these puns coming my way. My cheeks are starting to hurt now. All right, with that then. So let's take a look at this, because this stuff is just like the stuff we started with at the very beginning, right? Like the multiplication shortcuts. Like, is it a coincidence that they're giving you numbers like this? Hell no. This stuff is like, again, by intelligent design. And so when you see a question like this, it's like, well, I don't know how to do all the long multiplication because I'm not a loser, but I can break numbers down pretty quickly into manageable chunks. So it's like, all right, what's 10% of 66? Move the decimal one time, 6.6. What's half of that? A 3.3. Add them up, you're at 9.9. So, you know, Megan gave you a great resource. Sean gave you guys a great resource. Just start to pour through some of these, or pour over some of these mental math kind of resources if you're already not predisposed to doing mental math. I will tell you right now, you don't want to be that guy who for the next 6, 7, 8 weeks just does a lot of longhand math, and then all of a sudden start to come up against a brick wall, and then all of a sudden week 9, 10, 11, you're like, hey, Rob, you got any advice to be like a mental math guy? I mean, I've been done it for the last 8 or 9 weeks because I, you know, basically suck at listening. So what do you got for me? Nothing. Like, we're already trying to break so many bad habits that have been ingrained in us from years of, I'll say, shitty math. But I guess I get it. It gets the job done when it's supposed to, but not on a test like this. So you have to start changing very early on. So I'd encourage you guys, again, with stuff like this, to practice. Practice at restaurants. Practice at, like, freaking, you know, when you're buying clothes, like what the sales tax might be. Start to use units digits. Start to kind of think about some of these things ahead of time. So even here, 12 and 150. Now, even this can be done multiple ways. If I already start to know, hey, 12 times 15 is 180, I can add in some zeros, divide some zeros, because a percent just means per 100, and I can get this done pretty quickly as well. But if not, you still play the game. All right, well, it's 10% of 15. Well, what's 2%? Well, it's a fifth of the 15, which is just a 3. You're at 18 within seconds. 75 increased by 20%. Well, what's 10%? A 7.5. Double that, you're at 15. Okay. 90. Or you could have just said, oh, a fifth, 20 is a fifth, so a fifth of 15, well, 5 times 15 because it's on my grid. So you could start to do these multiple ways, but the key takeaway for me is do not do long multiplication. Like if I haven't been clear, I probably said long multiplication for losers at least 6 times now since Monday's lesson. And so to me, I just have to keep that in mind. And thus, the next time I find myself doing it on a practice test or homework, I kind of slap myself gently on the wrist and say, wait a minute, I'm probably losing right now. I got to look for a better way. This is a good question, guys. Take a look at this question. I like this question a lot, but I'm actually going to send you a video that I did on this question. And for the interest of time here today, I think I'm going to skip this question right now. But definitely do it. And then I want you to keep your eyes peeled for my video. And you'll start to see that I think a lot of people overcomplicate this for no good reason. If you can manage to keep it and I think, frankly, the book's kind of complicated too unnecessarily. But the one thing that I would say to you is just, it's about setup more than anything, as so much that what we're going to do in here in the world of quant. And so you want to be thinking, hey, how can I do this in a way that gets me those style points? And I'll send you a video of how I would do this question, and I think it should at least make your life 1,000 times better. All right, with that then, I want to take a look at this last question, because I really like this question. Because to me, this question represents, again, what so much of the GMAT can just be all about, which is just thinking. That's all. I could do a lot of math, but I'm not going to get rewarded for doing it. So notice what this question says. It says, at the peak of the real estate market, an investor bought a parcel of land. In the year that immediately followed, the value of that land decreased by 20%. By what percentage will the land need to appreciate for the investor to break even? Now notice, I have only percentages here. I have percentages there. If I wanted to, I could do, if I wanted to, I could do some brute force algebra. I could. It wouldn't be a good way to do it though. So what does that leave me with? Well, number picking really. And that's because a lot of times when I have no absolute numbers provided to me, exactly, and I have all percentages here, it tells me that number picking is probably a friendly way to go. There we go, Kyle. So at this point, so let me ask you this question here. If I were predisposed to wanting to drop the course, what answer choice would I pick right now and then go home with just a big fat fail? So I'm not even going to give opportunities for people to pick a drop the course, but what would I pick here and then just call it a night? Exactly, Sean. A bunch of B's, man. B is so bad, it's not even funny. Because at that point, what you're doing, I love it, Ray Sean, what you're doing at that point is you're basically saying F you to the test maker. You're like, dude, this is the best you got? Like, it's like, it reminds me of like, a training day with Denzel. Like, King Kong ain't got nothing on me. Like, that's what, choice B is. Like, man, this test has got nothing on me. It's like, dude, you're about to go where no man has ever gone before. I don't even think a 200 is theoretically, 200 is like theoretically possible. I don't know a single person that's ever got a 200. But you're on the road to a 200 if you pick choice B, because you basically said there's nothing to get from this. You're telling me I went down by 20 and you want me to break even, so if I went down by 20, don't I just gotta go up by 20? Like, at that point, here's the two things I could take away from you. One, you are so arrogant it's not even funny. Two, you've never lost a damn dollar in the stock market or on any investment. Because anybody that's lost any money knows, man, if I lose a percentage, if nothing else, I got to make more than that back. Because again, conceptually, it's sad but true, right? So if you think about it, if I had a big old bucket and then it got smaller, now I'm working with a smaller bucket. I got to do bigger of that portion in order to kind of break it back to even. So this is where, as a 99er, forget number picking and algebra. I'll tell you as a 99er what I do when I get to the end of that question mark. I put my head down and I pray to the almighty GMAT gods and I say, please give me one answer greater than 20% and I'm done. The clown in the cubicle next to me is sitting there trying to calculate. He's all happy because he's doing number picking because he realized that's a great strategy. I ain't that guy. I suck at math. And if I could just reason my way through this, I'm good. And I go, thank you, GMAT gods. Thank you, GMAT gods. Damn you, GMAT gods. You ruined me. Okay, still 1 and 3 I could do. But let's just say I do know how to do this. Let's just say I can start to break this down. What would you say would be a good number to start with for the original value if I wanted to pick a number? What would you guys use? Yeah, really nice. So with a percent-based question, 100 is a good way to go. 100 for sure is a good way to go because it doesn't require a whole lot of effort. I would not start dicking around with anything smaller. Certainly not with numbers like 5. And I get it because of the 20% that's given, but generally speaking, for percent-based questions, you always with an asterisk, always want to go with 100. That's my advice. So if I go down 20%, of course I'm at an 80. Now I got to get back to 100, which means I got to add 20. But what's 20 on the 80? Clearly a quarter. So is it a tough question? No, but it comes back to, again, I guarantee you if I had the polls open, people would be in B. I shudder to imagine people might even be in A, which is a complete fail. And so even if you don't know the math, even just start to think about how I described it. I had a big bucket, then I took a big portion out. Now if I want to fill it back up, it's like a big old ice cream tub or something. It's like, all right, well, I need to take a bigger portion just to kind of bring it back up to level because you're working with a smaller one to then ultimately begin with. But of course, I wish you had the math down. That's where the skill builder comes into the picture and you crush these kinds of things with ease. All right, guys, I want to slowly start to wrap this up. Notice what they say at the top there. I think this is really good kind of reminder. It says arithmetic may sound basic, but for most, it represents a new way of thinking about math. A lot of us came to class today not very respectful, sad to say. I understand it. It often happens. I'm not going to say this is mind-blowing, but some of those performances on some of these questions were actually kind of mind-blowing. We can't be that bad moving forward. Notice what it says is if the math looks too labor-intensive, it probably is. I think that's a good reminder. I say, hey, if you're doing it long, you're doing it wrong. You got to keep that in mind. There are obviously some things that the test maker used to kind of mess with us here today. But hopefully on each and every single one of these types of questions that we saw where things got a little bit hairy, we said to ourselves, the math wasn't that hard in retrospect. I get when I started to do it, I didn't know what the F to do. But now, as I saw him breaking it down and the classmates kind of talking about what they thought that you could do or what might be a good answer or what might be a sucker, like I could see now it's actually manageable. And it is. This stuff is manageable, but it has to be done the right way. So you got to start to see through these types of things. If instead you're like, oh, that was good, okay, in the back, never look for it again, you're effed. It will happen over and over and over. And that's something I want to make sure you understand. All right, we're done with week 1. What's in store for week 2? Monday's lesson is critical reasoning. In my opinion, critical reasoning is the single most important verbal lesson of the entire course, because so much of what we do will be critical reasoning based. Now, critical reasoning doesn't really have a skill builder. There's a minimal skill builder. But in my opinion, the true skill builder for Monday's critical reasoning lesson is that Foundations of Logic chapter that we did on Monday, like the last logic chapter, whatever chapter is, maybe 3, 4, whatever. Go to town, crush that chapter, folks. Just backwards, forwards. That's the true skill builder. Monday's lesson will be all about thinking like a lawyer, and I'm going to try to teach you to do that. And I know we have one esteemed colleague of the bar up in here, but to me, if you can crush what lawyers are tested on doing on the LSAT, here on the GMAT, and bring that mindset, dude, this is easy. And by the way, I don't need you to have gone to law school to be able to do that. I just need you to have watched freaking any TV show involving lawyers, and you'll be good. So that's Monday's lesson. What's Wednesday's lesson? Wednesday's lesson is algebra. I said to you at the beginning of class that arithmetic is easily, by far and away, the single most important math lesson in the entire course. I kind of lied. I kind of lied, meaning it's not by far and away. It's actually like 1A with 1B being algebra. So if I had to say what the 2 most important math lessons of the entire course are, it's arithmetic and algebra. Algebra has a beefy skill builder. come to class having crushed it. If this week you got a little bit crushed because you just didn't plan accordingly how much time you need to do, that's fine. You have now a full week to get your shit together and repurpose your schedule accordingly. Make sure you do that. It's okay in week 1 to kind of get your face kind of smacked a little bit, but it's not okay in week 2 to kind of do the same. You guys paid a lot of money to be here, guys. My sincerest advice is take the most out of it, and the way to do it is by putting the most into it. That's all I got to say here, folks. I see a bunch of private chats on my queue. I'm going to get to them all as soon as I get to my desk, so just sit tight, and I'll get back to you. Unless it's nothing that important, then just say as much, and you can bounce, obviously. Thank you all for participating. Sorry for running class so damn late. Really a nice week. I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the sentiment, Gurpreet. Have a good rest of the week, guys. I'll see you guys all on Monday. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to week 1. We're now into week 2.